Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here on another day, one of the last days of spring here as we get ready for summer. I am the great Brian Last. I'd like to announce I'm stepping down as host of the show. However, I'm going to retain all of the duties I had as host and introduce this man, the star of the Drive Thru, Mr. Jim Cornette.
But now, wait a minute. Which one of your daughters is taking over as host?
We're having an internal battle right now. I have 3 Stephanies all fighting with each other. I don't know what to do.
And they're all fighting because none of them want to do it, right?
Yeah.
Hey!
No, we're going to have a good time
today. Part
today.
where you're supposed to disagree with me.
I meant no, of course not.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, we had a couple of days away from all of the drama and the strife and the turmoil of the big corporate world and all the goings-on and et cetera, a nice holiday weekend, Father's Day. What did you do for Father's Day there, Mr. Father?
I watched CBS Sunday Morning with my family. We had a nice late breakfast brunch with, of course, French toast and French toast,
fries. Yeah. French toast and French fries?
Yes, I don't care what time of day, that meal is the perfect meal. But anyway.
What other kind of French did you get on Father's Day, Daddy?
You're getting a little French with me right now, sir, and I don't like it. But what I was going to say is also we just kind of had alone time, which is one of Daddy's favorite things. Everyone go do your own thing, leave me alone. And I was presented with some gifts, which I like, and some cards, which were beautiful. And then Daddy closed the door and worked on some Lego for a few minutes.
Leave Daddy alone for Father's Day.
Well, after a while, it's like,
after a while.
I've seen everyone's show. It's time to do some Lego.
Well, I had a wonderful Father's Day because, you know, it's been the heat wave here. And by the way, a lot of people have written in on the Twitter machine and the various forms of communication we've got these days to say that they appreciated the talk that we had the other day on dew points and how they affect the weather and the comfort of the weather and the temperature and the humidity and et cetera. They learned something. And they were shocked and amazed that you were frivolous, just filled with frivolity about not caring whether you knew the dew point or not. What other important statistics in your life are you blissfully unaware of? But anyway, so it's been real hot over the past week, 95 degrees plus, high humidity, and Father's Day weekend, the Saturday and Sunday, it cooled off. And the humidity went away like magic. Now, it's going to be 100 degrees, literally, in Louisville this coming week. Air temperature, not even figuring in the heat index. The heat's coming back. But for 2 days, we got a little break. So, I've had to do a variety of things, business-wise, stocking the Cornette's collectibles, interacting with the feather bottoms on the inventories, all these things. But even though I had some other things to do, I ran this by Stacy. I said, now I owe a bunch of people phone calls. I should call people on the phone. But it's Father's Day. And most of the people I'm overdue on calling are male people who would potentially have children, grandchildren, possibly even great-grandchildren. And also, I'd like to get out and piddle in the yard. And I got to email people. And I know you can email any day, but
piddle?
God, I hate to email. I like to piddle in the yard. You know, go out and do little chores, little tasks, not labor myself into a stroke, but go out and be productive, piddle around. I'm a big piddler.
I picture you just flapping your hands a little bit while you do that. I don't know why. Piddle. You piddle around.
But doesn't have anything to do with the flapping of the hands. You can piddle with your hands in your pockets. You're just piddling around. But anyway, and so I said, and you know how I hate to do emails, and I'm so behind on those anyway, and it's just daunting. You got to sit here tied up looking at the computer screen. And I said, would you think ill of me? Would anyone think ill of me? And she answered for everybody. If I went out and piddled in the yard on Father's Day, it's going to be such beautiful weather. And she said, no, you should do that because it's Father's Day, and you like to do that. So I get up early in the morning. And I open the door to go out in the garage, start getting my implements, and the first thing I see is the garage floor, a giant area of it is just covered in water. What the fuck? What the? And it's all around the freezer that we got in the garage with the excess foodstuffs stored therein. And I'm like, but it's, even if it fucking died and melted, it's watertight. How the fuck? And then I hear water, even though it ain't raining. It ain't gonna rain for another fucking week around here. We're in a drought. I hear water hitting the garage door. And I see a little stream come out. What the fuck? I raised the garage door, and Brian, the day before, because I did believe I mentioned a drought. It's been so dry, it hadn't rained over a week, however long it's been. The previous day, I drug the hose around so I could water the dogwood. I got a big property. Everything else is on its own, but I water the dogwood, right? So as I've run the hose around, since I'm going to it a couple of times a day to give it the good watering and everything, I just leave the hose out there by the dogwood tree. It's running right past the garage. And overnight, whatever causes these things to occur, a hole has popped into the goddamn hose. The hose is spraying out the side of the hose directly in the crack in the corner underneath the garage door, and it's shooting water into my garage. Motherfucker! So I got to go out. I got to climb over the thing. I got to turn the spigot off. And then I unhook the section of the hose and the whole night. That's the way I start my day. But I felt, all right, it's going to get better from here. So I go out in the side yard, and guess what I take with me, Brian?
What's that?
Oh, come on. You know what my favorite tool is. You're not listening to these talks that we have anymore on these programs where I talk.
The limb lopper.
The limb lopper, and it's a combination limb lopper and limb
lopper and what? The rod. What the fuck was the name of the rod?
Yeah, the rod. There, keep going. Keep going.
For when you look for water.
No, that's a divining
rod. Your divining rod and your limb lopper.
I've already found the water. You're not listening to the story that's coming out of I got plenty of water. It's all over the garage. It's the pole saw. It's a combination limb lopper and pole saw, a 20-foot telescoping pole saw that I'm so proud of, with that dandy blade that just cuts through anything like a hot butter through knife, as a famous wrestler who I cannot recall did the promo.
Who said that?
I'm trying to think who it was, but he said it. I'm going to go through you as in Memphis. I'm going to go through you like a hot butter through knife. But anyway, so I take that out in the side yard over underneath the big old ash tree, the 100-foot tall spreading ash tree. And I got some trees over there on the side. I pole saw and I limb lop, and I make me a couple of good big brush piles, getting all the dead wood cut out and everything, and trim off some of the fence over there. And I bring everything back to the brush pile, and I water the dogwood now that I've taken that section of the hose out of the bad section out. And I said, now I got to do one more thing. I got to go back to the new fence, and I got to count fence posts because I got to order the post caps. So I'm going back there in the far corner, in the woods back there. And right as I'm almost up to the fence, I see the foliage rustling, and I hear something fall, and I see something moving. I'm thinking, oh, shit, the deer is going to run out of the bushes there. And son of a gun, it was a human being. Come to find out, he was over in my neighbor's property, the lady that lives next to me. She has not... Well, she and her husband passed away some years ago. Let's face it, it's been about 30 years or so since anybody has addressed trimming anything off the back fence row of her property, which connects to mine. And the guy that lives behind her in that subdivision, one of them is over there in the woods trimming out dead limbs with a limb lopper. Because he's looking out the back window and he's seeing the dead limbs, and it's bugging him like I found a kindred spirit. I thought it was a wild animal. It's the neighbor back there in the southwest quadrant.
Have you seen him before?
Never seen him before. Well, because he's just now cut down some of the bushes. I'm saying it's quite thick back there. There was a fucking vine hanging off one of the trees, but I couldn't grab around with both hands. It's been several decades since people have cleared this thing, because it was just a farm back there, right? And she hadn't paid a lot of attention. Anyway, so he's got a ladder, and her old back fence is the original fence. The posts were wood, and they have all rotted and fallen away. So the barbed wire and the rusty wire from the 50s is just hanging in all the bushes that have grown up. So there's not a fence there. There's just a lot of tetanus-inducing rusty wire and all these dead limbs. And there's some of the bushes he's cleared off so that he can plant some things. But it's quite primitive back there. But he's trying to climb his ladder. I said, you might fall and puncture an artery. I said, you know what you need? You not only need a limb lopper, you need a pole saw. And he said, yeah, I was going to get one of those. I said, I know exactly where one can be found. And so I go back to the house and I go back up. It's because here I feel a kindred spirit. And also it's Father's Day. And here's another person adjacent to me that has decided that on Father's Day, he needs to go out and cut some dead limbs out of trees. And it's adjacent to my property also where I can see it. So he's improving my view. So I bring the pole saw up to him and I show him how it telescopes everything and the limb lopper and I said, well, I bet you could reach that big old dead limb right there. He said, yeah, let me try that. I handed over the fence to him on the other side. And it's my tree, right? Big old tree has this big old dead limb that I saw the other week. And I said, God, I'll wear my shoulders out if I try to use this hand pole saw to cut that big old limb. I'm going to wait until I've got one of the Monroes with the chainsaw, and they can get up there in a ladder and do whatever, They're great chainsaw jugglers too, the Monroes. But my new neighbor that I've just met, Mike is his name. He starts into that thing and he sawed that limb right off for me. And then I pointed out a couple other ones to him of my tree, but it's over on the other side that is in his view that he could cut off. And there he was just sawing away while I was pointing things out. So I loaned it to him. I said, just lean it back up here on the tree. When you get finished with it, I'll come back tomorrow and get it or whatever. But I had a nice Father's Day afternoon lopping limbs. Well, I can't say sawing poles because actually that doesn't really work. But you know what I'm saying. And then Father's Day dinner, Brian Lee, you had the brunch. You had the French toast and the French fries. Guess what we had here at Castle Cornette for Father's Day dinner?
3 guesses?
Well, if you need them.
Emo's Pizza?
No.
Cheeseburgers?
No.
Emo's Pizza, cheeseburger, something with meat and cheese. That's not a burger. You don't eat chili. You never brag about chili.
Well, no, Stace makes great chili.
But you don't, it wouldn't be
eat that on occasion, but
that's not a Father's Day dinner.
Not really a Father's Day dinner, no.
But you also like random things just baked. Like, I had a roast of this or that.
That roast possum was really good.
Steak.
No, you are incorrect because it's not the week for Omaha steaks. We did that last week. We had my world famous chicken fingers, fried potatoes with onions, biscuits and gravy is what we had. Because I know some people are going, well, Stace didn't cook for you. No, because here's the thing. I wanted to do this because I've been so busy for the past few months. I've not cooked any of my specialties, my world famous dishes. I have not had that opportunity. So I've been eating other people's food. So since I knocked off early after I was a good neighbor and got things done in the yard, I decided to cook dinner. And we had chicken fingers and fried potatoes and onions and biscuits and gravy and raspberry preserves, and our lips smacked our brains out.
You seem
French toast and French fries.
You seem rather proud of your chicken fingers, little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, how do you prepare them?
Well, I'll tell you exactly how I prepare them. I take
in great detail, please.
In great minute. Hey, there's no wrestling on TV we need to talk about today, thank God. You take the chicken breasts and you slice them up into the fingers, and you you crack some eggs and you whip it up and you dip them in the egg mixture and then you roll them around in the Andes hot and spicy chicken breading. And then you drop them in a deep fryer for 7 minutes. And then you bring them out and be careful when you first bite into them because you'll scald your tongue off. And they're delicious. And you can, as I said, we can go with the sausage gravy, or you can also go with ranch dressing for dipping. Or you can also, Chick-fil-A sauce they sell that now, and I get around the loophole of Chick-fil-A's owner being a religious lunatic, an anti-gay, and et cetera, because the Chick-fil-A sauce that they sell in stores, all of the proceeds of that goes to benefit an education program for their employees.
You see it in the stores? I haven't seen that.
Yes.
Oh, I gotta look for that.
Big old jugs of Chick-fil-A sauce. But you can dip these fingers. You can dip a finger of mine in anything, and it'll taste good.
Well, that remains to be seen. But let me ask you this:
Have I ever given you a finger?
No, thank you. How come you bought a chicken breast, not chicken tenderloins? You were just going to cut it into fingers anyway.
Because what are you, just goddamn frivolous with your money? For heaven's sake,
frivolous with my money. What?
They charge you more for chicken tenderloins, which is basically a sliced up chicken breast, than they do the regular. We get the packages of the chicken breasts all sealed up hermetically. It's been on Funk and Wagnall's porch since noon today from Costco. Big old 6 packages of 2 chicken breasts each, all wrapped up and sealed up, ready to go in the freezer or the fridge or whatever.
Farm raised?
I don't know whether they're urban, suburban, city dwellers. They might come from Manhattan. I'm not sure.
Were your chickens murdered, or did they die of old age?
No, all these chickens were driven to suicide. They were given a steady barrage of AEW television 24 hours a day until finally they all en masse jumped off the top of the coop.
I don't know where we're going or how we...
Well, you asked me a question.
All right. How much more expensive are tenderloins than if you just buy the giant chicken breast and cut it yourself?
That, you get fingers the size you want them.
How big are the fingers?
Think of how much better life would be if you could determine the size of the finger you got rather than just taking somebody else's decision on the size of the finger. So you'd improve your life immensely. I am in control of the size of my fingers.
I don't know who's in control of this show, but ladies and gentlemen.
It's your show.
Apparently so.
Oh, and which we've had some complaints on. And we've got to bring that up. No, and you and I were both disturbed on it. It was nothing we did and nothing we were in charge of. But apparently, on a couple of the programs recently, there have been an advertising that was snuck in on us without us knowing or without our people knowing, because we got people in charge of this shit and they didn't know about it. It was one of these other platforms that we go through, but there was an advertisement for Parler, which is the right-wing lunatic version of Twitter, as if Twitter wasn't bad enough to begin with. And we have made contact with our people who were upset about it also, and they are in the process of putting a stop to that. Is that the latest update you got? That's what I heard.
Yeah, as soon as we heard the second complaint about it, and we realized it may be more than one person just having an issue, we immediately got in touch with our team, and they are on it. That's the exact term. They were horrified too. No one really wants any association with this brand or this company. And of course, if you're someone interested in Parler, hey, just go home and jerk off into a sock. There are other things to do with your life.
What? Jerk off into what?
Instead of joining Parler.
Why would you want to do that to perfectly good fucking clothing? You know what kind of a laundry situation that, well then do you see, I do my socks with my towels because I wash them on heavy duty. Get the towels and the socks real clean because they go through a lot of abuse. And I wouldn't want to be putting socks like that in with my towels because then you're rubbing your towels. Well, you don't know where all these things would cross-contaminate. So they should just jerk off, but leave the poor sock out of it. You never know when somebody else's laundry could be involved. It's your television
It's my television show,
yeah.
but yeah, those ads will be gone if they're not already gone very, very soon. And we apologize to anyone who was bothered by them, but we were bothered as well. And
the last thing we want to do is offend anybody here. If we offend anybody, we want it to be the right people, not our people. If we're offended by Parler, we don't want to offend any other people that are offended by Parler.
And again, it's all about what offends you. Someone put the tweet up or put the quote up on Twitter the other day. I apologize for any noise behind me right now, but they put the quote up on Twitter the other day, and it was, whatever you said on the show, you cannot yell at wrestlers. You can fuck a paralegal and give her $3 million to go away.
Yes. Do you realize a lot of people have realized that Vince paid more for sex than he did for WCW?
Isn't that crazy?
And again,
That's
$3 million. Now, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but $3 million divided by $150. What would that be? Let's see. Hold on here. Let me do. Carry the 2 divided by 3. Put the aught over there. Decimal point. Roundabout. That's a leap year. We're not talking about that. He could have. Yeah. Well, you got to figure that in. Comes around once every 4. He could have basically, at $150 per appointment, had 20,000 hookers for the same amount of money.
Why are you always obsessed with him and getting hookers?
But now, wait a minute. If you're going to pay, then just eliminate the goddamn discomfort through the initial part of the relationship and get straight to the transaction. Now, taking this math further, that 20,000 hookers, that would be a hooker every day for around, what is this? Hold on, carry 2 divided by 3, so that'd be 10 years. It's up to 8, it's in the middle. Almost 50 years. So the point is, do the math there. Either way you look at it, 20,000 sexual exploits, or one a day for 40 years or so for that same amount of money.
Jim, I have pulled up here, according to ZipRecruiter, an online source, I guess, for finding people jobs or whatever the hell goes on this website, the average paralegal salary by state. Now, again, the woman in question was making $100,000, WWE paying her $100,000, starts having an affair with Vince McMahon, all of a sudden gets $200,000, then gets moved to working for Johnny Ace, then leaves the company for $3 million with a non-disclosure agreement.
In 2 years.
In 2 years. In Connecticut, the average paralegal salary is $49,925.
Okay. And that's in the state of Connecticut. That's not just nationwide. So she started out I didn't know that the WWE was that charitable with their employee salaries since they went public and everything.
According to this, you know which state has the highest average salary for paralegals?
I do not.
Tennessee, $51,612.
Well, that just doesn't make any sense at all, does it? You would think in New York or California or some major, I'm not saying that Memphis and Nashville aren't big cities, but you would then it's the music business down there. I guess a lot of people get sued.
Oh, see, I was looking at the other way. I'm not saying every town is Barberville, Kentucky, but I've seen enough towns to know that there are several. So maybe someone with a mind may make a little more money because we need someone like that.
It's your show.
I guess so. There it is. She was making double. She started with double the average salary for the state and then got a 100% raise. That's where
she did a good job, apparently.
That's where they're going to get Vince. Justify a paralegal getting that raise in year 2. What kind of job did she do?
Well, now she was hired as a paralegal. When she went over to work for Johnny Ace, maybe she was then segued into another position, and she was turned over to another department.
Maybe they gave her a commission for everyone Johnny Ace laid off. Every single wrestler they fired, she got a bonus.
She's the one that wrote the paperwork. Yeah, we got rid of another. Here's your commission. All righty then. Now you see where due points, paralegal salaries were filled with a fountain of information here. We got, before we go into any more silliness, too late maybe, but let's acknowledge a couple things that happened this past week. Dave Hebner passed away. As we had just talked about Dave a week or two ago on the program, or one of the programs, because I didn't even know he was sick until somebody had written an email, said he'd been in ill health. And we talked a little bit about, the twin referee angle with the, Hulk and Andre and DiBiase, et cetera. But Dave, I was 73. Earl is too. They're twins. I was going down the wrong road there. I was going to say Dave, I think, was older than Earl. That wouldn't make a lot of fucking sense, would it?
This is probably a silly question, but you met them when you first went to Crockett?
Earl, Dave had already gone up
Dave
north.
was already gone, okay.
Yeah. But they had started, because they're both from Richmond, and had started working in the wrestling business for Crockett with refereeing and rings and et cetera. And then Dave had already gone to New York. But we worked with Earl from the time we got there until that angle. I mentioned when we were talking about it, that's the first time that the boys working for Jim Crockett knew that Earl had jumped ship, was when we saw him on the live national TV special. But
how are him and Earl similar or different?
Well, I mentioned also when we were talking about that Earl stayed fairly thin through most of his life, but Dave kind of got to be the tubby one. And that's the way you could tell them apart later on in life. They were close enough to identical for rock and roll on the 1987 NBC main event angle. But over the years, Dave got a little heavier, so you could tell him, especially when you were around him all the time. But I mean, they were a lot alike, and you could close your eyes and hear one guy talk, and because of also that Virginia inflection, accent, whatever you call it, that they had, you could hear one and think of the other one. And honestly, I've got to know a little bit over the past few years, Brian Hebner, Earl's son, and he sounds just like him too. So it's something in the family. But Dave had transitioned, as we mentioned, into more office work and being an agent and working in the box office with the personal appearances at the live events, the sponsors, making sure everybody was happy, while somebody like Jack Lanza or, George Steele or, somebody else would handle the locker room itself, because that way they had somebody in the front and somebody in the back. And Dave did that for years and years while Earl was still refereeing. And I think Dave was wasn't he the fucking driver when Earl had his car waiting in Montreal?
So
yeah, as soon as the three count, not the three count, but as soon as the bell rang and Earl jumped out, Dave was the wheel man back there revving the fucking car up. And remember, I told this story on Dark Side of the Ring. I didn't even realize who it was until afterwards, but as soon as on the monitor, I saw the fucking, okay, here we go. They've done it. I'm getting out of here. I went in the parking garage was attached. You just in backstage in the arena there where the cars were parked was just in a big area in the back of the arena. So I just walked back through, got in my car and was starting to pull out. And I saw headlights come on and a motor start behind me. And that was them. I beat the Hebners out. But anyway, so David, I hate that we just heard recently he was ill. I could think somebody said Parkinson's disease. But so we wanted to recognize that and our sympathy to Earl and Brian and everybody else in the family. And then what about bad week for referees? Tim White just passed away. So I hadn't seen him in a few years. A Fan Fest was the last time that I saw him. But didn't know anything was wrong health-wise. And I guess I heard in the story of, when he passed that he was scheduled to have some type of surgery upcoming. But otherwise, I don't really know what happened. But what a great guy he was, too. And he was all over they've done so many shows lately, but he was on the Andre documentary as well as some of the other programs that they've done over the last few years, because a lot of people know he was not only a referee in the company, but also was really good friends with Andre and was the guy that was put in charge of driving and traveling with Andre and his facilitator, because we've talked about how hard it was for Andre at his size to travel in the world. And for years and years, Tim was with him and made things easier and was somebody that he liked and trusted to travel with. And that was his job for quite a while. And also he ran the Friendly Tap in, what was it, Cumberland, Rhode Island? But his own little corner neighborhood bar. And they would use that whenever they were up in the area for television. And Bradshaw and Ron Simmons would tear the place up, the APA, or they'd do some fight angle or whatever, or something. When they were doing stuff with Tim, they would do it at his bar, which was a shoot. And I always loved the name because that was like Timmy. He's just a friendly guy. And you asked me before we went on the air, was there any, particular Tim White stories? And he didn't rib anybody, nor did anybody rib him, right, in a spectacular way. Everybody loved Timmy. He was the greatest guy. He never fucked up or messed up or, had a big dramatic issue with anybody. I did the referee boxing with him on one of those pay-per-views of, what was it, 98, I think, in Greensboro. And he was fucking hilarious. But anyway, and I guess he ended up, I think he quit refereeing. Did he have an injury? He got hurt.
I'm not sure.
An arm or a shoulder or something, had to quit refereeing and tried to come back at one point, and it wouldn't, and they either heard it again or saw that it wasn't going to work or whatever. But he, would do backstage stuff for the company up until, I guess, several years ago. I don't know how long it's been, but I hated to hear that. And he was 68. So now that I've brought everybody down, Brian, it's your show.
I have some breaking news.
Oh, Jesus.
Mike Chioda is still alive.
Oh, God damn it. Don't do that to me. He owes me money. No, I'm no, that's a Bobby Heenan. Chioda, if you're listening, that's a tribute to the brain.
All right. Well, what won't be a tribute to the brain in any form or fashion will be this show here this week. Of course,
got any stories about your bears?
No bear updates from me or the neighbors.
How is it that you have a family of bears on your property, full-grown adult bears, and they're not doing as much damage as my one giant mutant raccoon that we talked about on the experience this past week?
People don't know this. You were so bothered by the fact that I mildly scoffed at the story that you sent me several emails.
Yes.
With high-definition photos of the goddamn raccoon, its giant eyes, and just, it's bizarre when you actually see the way the grass is ripped up. It's crazy. And of course, chasing the deer.
Because you scoffed at me, and when I told you that my neighbor, Stunning Steve Bradshaw, to the southeast quadrant back there, that he actually got a night vision camera because he was so gobsmacked at what was happening to this new sod and what was tearing it up, what was going on, that he's supposed to be watering. Steve, if you're listening, I guess I won't fucking charge you for this damage because you did prove that it wasn't you, but he got the night vision camera, took the pictures. I sent you the pictures. It's a giant mutant demonic raccoon with demon eyes. And there was even a picture of it scaring the full-grown adult deer off of the sod so it could have it all to itself. And I just don't ever scoff at me when I tell you any of these stories, Brian Last. I got proof.
I just don't want this to be a competition where I have to start sending you photos of the bears and the coyotes and the frogs and everything.
Well, only if they're doing some damage.
All right. So far, they're not.
Well, that's the point that I made. I got one raccoon that's fucking Eating me out of house and home here with all this money I spent on this sod, and you got a family of bears just wandering around doing nothing. I want some children to go missing up there, so I feel better.
That's horrible. How could you say such a thing?
Well, I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody's dog.
So you feel better. Get out of here. I don't know where we're going, Jim.
It's your program.
Well, do you have any more emails over there? Anything you wanted to talk about? Anything on your agenda?
Well, thank you for that pitch, Brian Last. Actually, that's what I told you earlier that I had so that you would give me a segment, because in actuality, I'm going to flip the script on you, Brian Last. Wild card, bitches! I've got a segment that you have no forethought or foreknowledge about that I'm going to spring on you right now. Let's see how good you are. What is the recurring segment that we do on this program that everybody just loves and goes ape shit over?
Oh, geez, there's so many.
Well, there's so many running through your mind. Guess the program.
That's right.
That is where you take a program out of your collection, tell me the lineup, and ask me to determine the location and the year that it happened. But never in the history of this program, Brian Last, have we flipped this on its ass and me asked you the questions. And right here in public, if you will, I am daring you, challenging you, double dog daring you. You don't have a hair on your balls if you do not accept this challenge.
Yeah, I'll accept any challenge. I'm not worried about that. Whose programs are these from?
They're my collection.
They're from your collection, not some goofball sending in random things from home.
No, I don't deal with goofballs over here. So it's a goofball-free organization over here.
You would go and put your hands on your things and ruin your collection potentially just for me to embarrass you in this segment?
I put my hands on my things on a regular basis because I do it carefully, I'll have you know. Never know when something could bend, break, or fall off.
You're in charge of your fingers. We've already established that.
And I don't know how much embarrassing is going to be done around here. That's what we're gonna perpetrate and find out.
Right? For the record, I've had 2 coffees today, but they were late, and I haven't had vitamin water yet. So.
Oh my God. So yes, what would the people say? What would the cult of Cornette out there? What would they say if on any one of these programs, if I was to say, well, when we play Guess the Program, I was to say, well, you know, I haven't had a Sprite Zero.
If you
hadn't had my vitamins.
If you hadn't had a Sprite Zero, we would have heard about it the entire show.
We probably wouldn't be doing the program. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's right.
But I wouldn't use it as an excuse to not know the date of a wrestling card.
That might be the only thing you would use as an excuse, now that I think about it.
Well, maybe I picked a bad for instance, but nevertheless, so you haven't had your vitamins and you've only had 2 coffees, and you're going to try as best you can laboring under those handicaps, right?
Is this one program or a series
This is a number of programs. Let's see how you do over the long haul. See, you start getting worried already, getting the limber tail over there.
I remind you, you're the star of the show. I'm the host of the show. That's what listeners want. They don't want the focus to be on me.
We're putting the focus on you. We're putting you on the spot. See how much you know there, pal.
All right, let's do this.
All right, let's start off with an easy one. I'll give you the card as you normally do for the opening match on to the main event. You tell me the year, or approximate year, and the approximate location. We'll start off with an easy one. Mike Romano versus Jerry Monahan. Next match. Jack McCarthy versus Sandor Zabo. Next match, Scotty McDougal, who is, of course, from Scotland, taking on Big Glenn Munn from Lincoln, Nebraska. And the main event, with a 2-hour time limit, Texas Cowboy Jack Russell versus Germany's athletic idol, Richard Schickat. 4 matches, main event, Schickat, Russell, Sandor Zabo on the card, as well as Big Glenn Munn.
Big Glenn Munn is the interesting one there.
Tell the folks why.
Well, the name...
Because he's Wayne Munn's brother.
That's right. Now tell the folks who Wayne Munn is.
Well, he's Big Wayne Munn. And that's the thing, is it's sort of like we've got a Jim Belushi situation going on here. Care to take any passes at this one?
So Dick Schickat and Sandor Zabo were on the same show. Sandor Zabo...
And I'll give you another hint. The promoter was Abe Feinberg.
I fucking know that name, too. All right. So this is the 40s. It wasn't a world title, you didn't say, for the main event. It was just 2 hours?
It is not. It's just a 2-hour time limit match with Germany's athletic idol, Richard Schickat.
Maybe it is the 30s. 1939. Am I right on the year?
No, you are not.
Okay. All right, well, 1941, Minnesota. Yeah, I know it's not Minnesota. Where is it?
February 7th, 1933.
Wow, okay, I'm totally off.
At the Armory in Louisville, Kentucky.
Really? Who's the promoter?
Abe Fine. Well, I don't know. His name is most often spelled Finberg. So it could possibly have been Finberg, but I would say Feinberg. And that's an alternate spelling sometimes I've seen.
Right. Another spelling would be Fein Berg.
Yes, that's yes, that's there you have it. All righty.
Well, what else do you know about
embarrassed.
What else do you know about that card? I mean, do you know anything about what kind of crowd it drew?
Absolutely fucking no. Actually, this particular card, the only reason that I was able to get this is because Cosper did a lot of this research and everything, but this is hold on, I'm going to count. It's a weird, it's not a fold over like 4-page, it's a fold over 6-page, and it folds twice. And it's advertising a variety of events like Earl Carroll Vanities at the Memorial Auditorium in Louisville, February 3rd. The Kentucky Hotel, dance to the tuneful melodies of Milburn Stone and his orchestra. I don't know if it's the same guy that played Doc on Gunsmoke. There's a couple of other ads for hotels and shit. Then the wrestling lineup. And then it's an actual, there's also the program for, hold on, I'm trying to turn this carefully. Program for the Vanities with who plays all of the Earl Carroll Vanities with who plays all the parts and the various acts and scenes involved. So it's interesting. But
is that the oldest program from Louisville you have?
Yes, it's the oldest one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've never seen one from the 30s, no.
But this was probably, I think, 2 years before Haywood Allen, who was an assistant to Feinberg, began the Allen Athletic Club, and it ran for a little over 20 years. I got another one.
What started messing with me was the whole young German idol thing. Just because of, thinking about the timing of World War II and then trying to think of Zabo. And that's what threw me off on the year completely. But
he's listed here as a 205-pound Hungarian champion, so he wasn't very old.
No.
And tickets, by the way, $1 ringside, 75 cents main floor, entire balcony 50 cents, ladies 25 cents. All seats plus 10% United States tax. And tickets were on sale at Goodman's Newsstand. In those days, for something like that, the Armory, the later to become the Louisville Gardens, actually seated more people then in those days before it was renovated into a modern arena than it does now or did in its day. But for something like that, the research that Cosper has done, there would still be anywhere of 2,000 to 3,000 people to 5,000 people on a big show in Louisville, even back in those days. And the heyday, the biggest crowds, we've come to find out, were not even the biggest crowds consistently for the longest period of time were the Jarrett days. But there was a period between 1950 and 1955 when their big shows for the Allen Athletic Club under Francis McDonough, who took it over, were 8,000 and 9,000 people, which was way more now than the revamped Gardens could ever seat after the early 60s. So it was but that was with the national TV, and they'd bring in Thez versus Baron Leone, a rematch of the Los Angeles match, was one of the Derby Eve spectacular matches that drew like 9,000 people.
We've seen shows where, discounted tickets for children if you're with an adult or something. What do you think about the idea of such a discount for women to get them into the show?
Well, that was common in the 30s because not only did women mostly not go to boxing and wrestling, but also they definitely weren't going to go unescorted. So the idea was, hey, you can bring your wife for a quarter if you come. And that, they would get a few more people in that way. But it wasn't just wrestling back then. And this was in the Depression. So,
yeah, and TV would have changed that because once women started watching these wrestlers on TV, all of a sudden you had a whole new audience.
Right. And I don't have it in front of me to prove it, but I think there was special ladies admission prices to different variety of sports back then, or different varieties of functions. Anyway, I got another one for you. This will be a little easier. I was jacking with you on the first one. I think you'll nail this one right away. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The opening match, Rowdy Red Roberts versus Red McIntyre. The second match, Jim Caulfield versus Buddy Knox. The third match, Bibber McCoy versus, listen to this name, Angelo Sistoldi from Boston, Massachusetts. I believe this is a wrestling promoter's attempt at spelling Savoldi, but it was Sistoldi. The first main event, Helen Hild versus Teresa Tice. And the second main event, to a finish, Tarzan White versus Babe Zaharias.
I'm guessing it's early 50s. Red Roberts.
Opening match.
Is it Georgia?
You are correct.
Now I got to guess the year. That's where I'm not going to get it. And what led me there? What's led me to kind of the time period is just knowing it's actually Helen Hild being on the show and kind of knowing her history a little bit. 1951, maybe.
Oh,
50?
June 23rd, 1950.
Oh,
Paul Jones Sports Attractions.
yeah, there you go.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. Okay, I didn't even know it was Atlanta. Okay.
Atlanta, Georgia, and obviously at the City Auditorium back then. And Helen Hild, obviously, for the folks who don't know, was Ted DiBiase's mother.
That's right.
And Teresa Tice was an established lady wrestler at the time who, in a couple of years from this, would meet and marry Ray Stevens and help in his early training. Babe Zaharias, who wrestled Tarzan White in the final main event, was actually George Zaharias, who was married to Babe Diedrichson Zaharias, who was the most famous female athlete in United States history. But as a wrestler, he sometimes used Babe Zaharias because I guess it was more name recognition, right? And a couple of items in the cavalcade of new stars signed to appear here. Young 218-pound Chattanooga dropkick artist Eddie Gossett.
Wow.
Will make his first make his first Atlanta appearance on Friday, July 7th.
Young
And
Chattanooga dropkick artist. Wow.
Yes, 218 pounds. Eddie Gossett, of course, would later become Eddie Graham. Also, in the Paul Jones's Cauliflower Gossip column, Gorgeous George, the Marcel tough man from the West Coast, defeated Don Eagle, the Mohawk Indian, for the Eastern and European heavyweight title.
If you had told me that, I would have immediately known 1950. That would have been a giveaway.
Because that was the double cross in Chicago.
That's right.
Buddy Rogers will meet champion Lou Thez at Wrigley Field, Chicago, June 21st. Lou Thez will appear here July 7th. Babe Zaharias and brother Chris have received several good offers to defend their tag team championship around Chicago. George Temple is wrestling on the West Coast. That's Shirley Temple's brother, was a wrestler, George. Anyway, so that you got that one pretty dadgum close there, pal.
I could have done better.
Well, let's see. Maybe you'll do better with the next one.
The program clues would. What did you say the date was of the Georgia one?
The date was of the
Atlanta
actual program of Friday, June 23rd, 1950.
Yeah, I would have gotten the summer of 1950 if you had told me Don Eagle and Gorgeous George.
Well, of course you would. But that was extraneous information, not part of the rules of our game here. You wouldn't be trying to make me cheat, would you?
Hey, I invented this game.
Well, in that case, then I'm allowed to change the rules. All right. The next card. Frank Townsend versus Bob Corby. Second match, Eugenio Marin versus Hombre Montana. Third match, Fritz Wallach versus Arnold Skoland. Next match, Miguel Torres versus Ted Lewin. And the main event, 2 out of 3 falls, Johnny Barrand and Don Lewin versus Dr. Jerry Graham and his brother Eddie Graham.
Fascinating. Okay. So Arnold Skoland being on the show and the Graham brother. Give me the card one more time? Because there was something that made me think one thing, and then by the end of it, I thought something else. Can you give me the card one more time?
Frank Townsend and Bob Corby.
Yeah.
Hombre Montana, Eugenio Marin. Arnold Skoland, Fritz Wallach. Ted Lewin, Miguel Torres. And then the Graham brothers against Johnny Barrand and Don Lewin.
I was going to say the Texas territory, but this is the New York territory, I believe.
I will get, you are correct.
And I'm saying that because of the Graham brothers, because of Arnold Skoland, obviously. So this is New York. The Graham brothers are teamed up. Dr. Jerry and his brother Eddie. It's not, I don't think it's 57. It could be 58 or 59.
I need a final answer.
Yeah, no,
or even a question.
I'm actually in my head, I'm trying to think if it's a spot show or if it's the Garden. I can't imagine that would be a Garden card. So I'm going to guess it's a show in New Jersey somewhere. And I'm going to go with it's 58.
Arg! Temple Hall, Highland Park, New Jersey, April 10th, 1959.
Fuck! Oh, come on! I was so close.
And next Friday night at Temple Hall, Highland Park, New Jersey was a Friday night town. Apparently, because next Friday night, you'll see Haystacks Calhoun and Red Bastien against Carl Von Hess and Judo Jack Terry in a tag match. A tag match. And other TV stars. Plus, the next night, a super-duper wrestling show at the Patterson Armory in Patterson, New Jersey on April the 18th. Order your tickets now. So you got the state, you got the fact that it was a spot show, and you were only a year off. So that ain't bad.
The Graham brothers teaming up in the Northeast is what helped me narrow it down. Because there's a period where it's over and Eddie goes to Florida, even though Vince could still get him to come back if he wanted him. And there's kind of a main period where it's Dr. Jerry and his brother, because Jerry was the bigger star.
Well, let's go to another one and see how you fare. You're doing pretty good since that swerve I threw in on you at first. Here is the card. The first match, Lee Garcia versus Ken Cooper. Second match, Prince Omar versus Tito Carrion. The next match, tag team action, The Masked Medics number 1 and 2 versus Pedro Godoy and Pat O'Brien. And the main event, a handicap match, Chief Bigheart versus Swede Hansen and P.Y. Chung.
This is Jim Crockett Sr., I think. And I think that because of P.Y. Chung, actually, specifically. That's Tojo Yamamoto, before he was Tojo Yamamoto. And I believe that was what he used for, well, his run in the Carolinas.
Correct.
Now, at that time, I'm trying to remember if Jim Crockett's still at Johnson City. I'm just, in my head, I'm trying to figure out where his territory boundaries were for the general period of time I'm thinking. I know where they would go north and east, but it's definitely a Crockett show. Give me a couple of the matches again.
Well, the main event's Chief Bigheart versus P.Y. Chung and Swede Hansen, and the Masked Medics versus Pedro Godoy and Pat O'Brien. And Pat O'Brien is not Pat Malone, who we have learned used that name in the 40s and 50s. But it is there's a picture of him here, and I don't recognize the guy, but it ain't him.
And it doesn't list any manager for the Medics.
It does not list any manager for the Medics, nor are they is a manager in the picture of the Medics that is in this program.
Can you tell me if it's North Carolina or Tennessee?
North Carolina. See, when people second guess themselves sometimes they ought to just go with their first.
Johnson City was in my head for some reason. I guess because Tojo and Tennessee, it fucks with your head sometimes the way things come together.
But P.Y. Chung.
P.Y. Chung, I'm going to go, I'm going to get the year wrong. I'm going to go with 62, if not Greensboro, Charlotte.
Boom! Jim Crockett Promotions, the Park Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, August 14th, 1961.
Oh, man.
Again, you're right there. You're getting the territories. You're right there with the years, but not quite. But some of the ads, Crockett always had great ads. Because remember, the story was Jim Crockett Sr., there was a bar and grill that his office for ages was a special table in that business, and he would conduct all of the promotion business from there. Well, he's got a bunch of advertisements for restaurants, including the South 21 curb service restaurant and the Auto Burger 1 mile east of the Coliseum, 15-cent hamburger, 20-cent cheeseburger, 15-cent French fries, and milkshake. And all the drinks are either 10 or 15 cents. You can get lemonade, grape, soft drinks, hot chocolate. You know what the guy who owned that place said when he went home? What'd he say? It's like a license to print money. Championship Wrestling was seen on WBTV Channel 3, Saturdays 5:30 to 6:30. That was the strongest television station in North Carolina at the time. And also there was the Hickory House Restaurant with their special barbecue and curb service. Anyway, and Red Top Cab. Any picture of Bill Ward? A picture of Bill Ward, a picture of Jim Crockett. Stamey's Drive-In Restaurant has seafood and steak. All righty, let's go to another one. You're not doing too bad so far. Let's see if we can get you anything here. Here we go. Are you ready? Yeah. The opening match, Rocky Montero versus Jack Armstrong. The second match, a get-even bout. Les Roberts from Australia versus Rocky Johnson from Nova Scotia is listed that way. A special attraction match for the first time ever in the United States, the All-Asian Championship. Karl Heisinger, who is a bleached blonde German fellow with a beard, but he's billed as from Chicago, against a gentleman named Ilkim Kintaro Oki. This is the Olympic Auditorium. Hold on. Fucking feeling froggy, aren't you? John Tolos and the Great Kojika. Yeah, this is the Olympic Auditorium. versus La Pantera Negra and Tony Rocco. The main event, Fred Blassie versus The Sheik.
I'm going with, the year is going to throw me off because it could be any, Rocky Johnson, The Sheik is in there, Freddie Blassie, anyone, since I know exactly where it is, can you tell me who's a champion? Is Blassie the America's champion?
It's not a title match. It's a grudge match.
Grudge match.
It is not for the title.
Who's Rocky Johnson's opponent?
Les Roberts, who he worked as Dingo the Sundowner. He's an Australian fellow.
And what was the tag team match?
Tag team match since you've already got the Olympic Auditorium, for the America's tag team title, La Pantera Negra and Tony Rocco versus John Tolos and the Great Kojika.
Bob Barnett hated Tony Rocco. His least favorite wrestler ever. I'm going to get the year wrong. I'm going to go with 70. It's either... I was going to say it was either 71 or 72, but it could be earlier, especially with Rocky Johnson being there. I'm going to go with 69. Just throw a number out there.
Oh, my God. You said 71, 72, 69, June 26, 1970.
Fuck. God damn it. I apologize to the Los Angeles historians out there.
And if you join the Olympic Discount Club for $2, you get a discount on all the Wednesday night wrestling events. You get one ticket with each one purchased. And if you buy one and receive the one next to it, or you can buy one and receive the one next to it for only $1 on Big Friday mat cards. You get the wrestling news delivered free to your house.
Hey, all right.
And for $2. But they have one of the cards to show you what you get when you get the membership, and it's written in handwriting, sample only, like people were trying to clip it out of the program and turn it in. And here's one I know you're going to get. Here's one I think you'll really like. This card.
Oh, that trick never works.
Yeah, well, this one will there, fella. The opening match. Bill White and Ed Wiskoski versus Roy Lee Welch and Bob Orton Jr. You might want to take some notes on this one.
Florida.
I'm not done yet.
Keep going.
The Infernos, managed by J.C. Dykes, versus Big Bill Dromo and Jerry Oates.
Georgia.
Rocket Monroe versus Bearcat Brown.
Yeah, I'm going to stay in Georgia right now.
Sputnik Monroe versus Tiger Conway Jr.
See, once again, that could be Florida. What's next?
The Medics.
These guys again.
Probably not the same ones as earlier in the program, versus Eddie and Mike Graham.
That would make you think, ding, 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 it's Florida. However, based on the time period, it could be when they were going up to Georgia to help out. But keep going.
Mr. Wrestling 2 versus Billy Spears.
And it is Atlanta, Georgia, maybe the Omni. What's the next match?
For the United States Championship, the Sheik, managed by the Grand Wizard, versus Bobo Brazil.
Okay.
And by the way, that is interesting because have you ever seen the Sheik billed as being managed by even though Abdullah Farouk was the Grand Wizard, it was a dual personality.
Yeah.
But the Grand Wizard, at this point in this place, had more magazine publicity than did Abdullah Farouk. This is a mask at stake match for a title with no time limit and no disqualification. Cowboy Bill Watts, the champion, versus Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods.
Bill Watts, the champion, Georgia. It's either the North American Championship there, or that was in Florida, or okay, keep going.
Next match. the finals of a Cadillac tournament. There is no time limit. This is a round-robin 3-man tournament. The winner will drive away in a 1973 Cadillac. And the way this match works is the 3 guys...
I was going to say 73 for the record.
Hold on. Oh, I just gave the goddamn year away, didn't I?
Yep.
Well, nevertheless...
But let me stop and explain how I would have said 73. It's obvious to me that it's a Georgia show. It's obvious that it's during the war, and it's obvious that it's before Jerry Jarrett was booking. So that puts it in 73.
And also, I knew you were going to know this, but I wanted to get to, but I gave the goddamn Cadillac thing away. But anyway, the way they determine this is they flip coins, and the odd man sits out. The 2 guys with it match the coin flip wrestle a match, and whoever wins that wrestles the odd guy. And one man has to win 2 falls. So if the odd guy then beats the guy that just won, then the first guy gets back in and they go till somebody wins 2 falls, which nobody does anymore. And it'd be a lot easier to understand than this goddamn 18-man clusterfuck. But anyway, Bobby Duncombe versus Bob Armstrong versus Bobby Shane. And the main event, extra added match, NWA ordered lumberjack match, Norvell Austin versus Dandy Jack. Not Dandy Jack Donovan, but the manager Dandy Jack.
Crawford?
I believe that was his last name, I think. But you've already said it, the Atlanta Omni, and the date, Friday, May 18th, 1973. But do you know what's special about that particular event?
May 1873. It's the first Omni show.
That is the first Omni show. And this program that I hold in my hands that you can hear is from Gordon Soley's personal collection.
Wow.
I got it at one of the fan fests from his daughter and son-in-law that were there that had written the book and etc. And I got the first and second Omni events from his personal collection. And this was a big deal because at that time, that was the biggest indoor arena that had ever run for wrestling in the South, right? 1973. And it was the Omni was pretty brand new at that point.
The Omni ended up being a game changer, but also being something that in the long run hurt the company because when you didn't have the city auditorium and you had to run the Omni, it cost a lot more money.
Yeah, but what they started doing was running the city auditorium every Friday night for 3 weeks, and then the Omni, the big spectacular with outside talent, would be once a month. And the auditorium seated, 6,000 people, so it was more affordable and it was easier, and then you went to and did more than 6,000 people for the big show, but when they closed the city auditorium, that's when things went to hell because now they couldn't, they did a few times try to run the Omni every week. Not for long, but they couldn't run a building of that size weekly and sustain, it was unsustainable as far as the rent. And you couldn't do, even when their business was hot, 15,000 people every fucking week. So they had to back up to every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, and they lost the momentum of the regular fans' ticket money, and that combined with the extra rent, that's why they ended up going to intermittent spectaculars, but it wasn't, well, not intermittent, they were still there at least once a month, but it wasn't the schedule it used to be.
Considering what Nick Goulas ended up doing, building his office, again with cash, how come more wrestlers, considering the political relationships they had when they were promoters in a local town, why didn't they just build their own buildings? When a city auditorium went down, why didn't they spend a few bucks, find a politician to work with, and build a 5,000 seat building somewhere? I know it sounds crazy to think of it that way, but if your business depends on that, I don't know.
Well, but here's there's a wide gap between I'm going to build this nice little office for myself over here for 150 grand 40 years ago or whatever it was, and I'm going to build a 5,000 or 6,000 seat arena that then I not only have to build it, but I have to do the upkeep and the maintenance. And then am I going to rent it out for other events? Or am I just going to use it once a week or once every 2 weeks? And other times they got away with it in Mexico because of the, I'm sure, inexpensive construction costs, as well as the multitude of shows they ran, and the business was set up differently down there. But I mean, we did it with OVW because, and it was the idea to do with Ring of Honor under Sinclair, because now we're talking about an existing building that you can customize to seat 1,000 people. But in those days, a building that seated 1,000 or 2,000 people in one of the promotion's main towns wasn't going to do anybody any good. So it's a lot. And then plus you still have to go through building permits. And even for what we did in OVW, which was kind of like a glorified, television studio soundstage type of thing rather than an actual sports arena, there was the number of bathroom stalls and you have to have, and how far the urinal on the wall needs to be from this thing, and the code and fire violations and staffing. And no, in this country, in the days of the territories, for the crowds that most of the promotions were drawing, that would have been a ridiculous expense. It would have been like building a new mid-sized sports arena in these towns.
I wonder how many wrestling promoters tried to use their influence on local politicians to say, hey, you're tearing down this building, replace it with something new or whatever. Sell it to us.
I don't know that ever came into their mind, to be honest. But, again, if the city owned something and was selling it, there was probably a reason why. Such as you need to practically redo this place from the start. But that was it even used to be in, like, I've seen spot show contracts that Crockett, and certainly we worked off a lot of Crockett's paperwork because Sandy Scott had it to do Smoky Mountain Wrestling paperwork. And some of the other territories that I've worked at, their letter going out to potential sponsoring groups like football teams and high schools, athletic boosters, whatever, to bring spot shows to town. The main thing was you have to be able to provide a building that seats at least 1,500 people, I think was the cutoff. They didn't want to, in those days, except if it was, Tupelo on a Friday night because everybody's got to be in town for Memphis TV 8 hours later, they didn't want to fuck with a building or running a show that couldn't draw 1,000 or 1,500 people in a small town.
All right, and that was Guess the Program.
Well, hold on there, cowboy. I think we got another one. I think we missed one.
Oh.
Hold on. I'm trying to wait a minute. Here it is. One more.
I haven't heard Pedro Godoy's name enough today.
Well, you won't hear it here, but you will hear another couple of interesting names. The first match, Tojo Yamamoto versus Billy Wicks.
Huh.
The second match, Tretch Phillips and Corsica Joe versus Lynn Rossi and Tony Belergian. The third match for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship, Wilbur Snyder defends against a fellow named Kanji Inoki, who, as you well know, is Antonio Inoki. And the main event return 10-round boxing match. Special referee Archie Moore. Alex Perez versus Prince Pullins.
All right. Well, it's definitely the Tennessee territory, I believe. A couple of interesting things make me think it could be a different town. I don't think it's Memphis because of Len Rossi being on the show. I know it's a weird thing, and not that he didn't wrestle in Memphis, but I'm thinking Nashville, not Memphis. 65. Nashville.
Boom!
Because of Noki.
Hold up, boom on the year, but not boom on the town. You fucking kayfabed yourself.
Memphis.
November 29, 1965 in Memphis. And part of the reason why Lynn Rossi may have been there is because Jerry Jarrett wasn't a thing yet. And we don't know for sure that Birmingham was running that night. That may have been, it wasn't a big thing for Lynn Rossi to be in. As a matter of fact, he'd been working a program the previous weeks with the mysterious medics who apparently were everywhere. And as a matter of fact, the following week, Inoki would team up with Hiro Matsuda against Lynn Rossi and Tony Belergian.
You know
But
what?
nevertheless,
You know what? We just got an email that was sent in asking about that letter you read on the show. That was Lance Russell's letter where he talked about his favorite match ever was a tag match with Matsuda and Inoki.
Yeah.
And the listener wanted to know where could that have possibly been from? That doesn't sound like a Memphis match. And here we are talking 1965. Both guys are there.
Well, and it was in Memphis because Inoki was sent by the Japanese promotion. What was the JWA, right? The original, to America in 1965, just like they would send all the other young guys. Baba went in 62? He was all over the country. The giant Baba from Japan.
As a main eventer. Yeah.
As a main eventer, wrestling for multiple world titles, NWA and others, because of his size, and that was completely unusual, and it was 15 years after the war. Well, Inoki didn't get that kind of treatment because he wasn't a giant, and he was sent to Memphis, and he worked the Tri-Cities territory in East Tennessee. He was in Johnson City and Kingsport. That's why in 1965, I said, that's a great answer to a trivia question. The people got to see Ron Wright, Whitey Caldwell, and Antonio Inoki.
Billy Wicks threw me off. Billy Wicks being there in 65 that late, because I kind of feel like, in my head, I almost feel like he went away after like 61. But I know he still worked a lot of shows. Well, not a lot of shows.
Here's the thing. Billy Wicks was just in this period of time that I'm looking at, September 27, October 4, October 11, October 18th. He's the opening match every week. He was working at the sheriff's department in Memphis, and he still wrestled locally. But at the same time, they weren't really doing anything with him, but he just, to keep his hand in and see the boys. But the Eddie Graham, the tag team changed. For example, Eddie Graham and Sam Steamboat were the recognized world tag team champions in Memphis in 1965. Here they wrestle Alex Perez and Tojo Yamamoto in 3 or 4 weeks in a row in a program. Buddy Fuller and Lester Welch were a top tag team at that point, and Lester Welch either later on or then did own part of Florida. The point is there was a talent exchange, and that's where Jerry Jarrett would have first gotten to know Eddie Graham, is when he was coming to Memphis in the mid-'60s. While he was establishing Florida, he was working with Nick and Roy and some of the other promoters, to probably to make extra money to establish Florida and make contacts. So that tag team title match you're talking about that Lance mentioned in his letter did happen in Memphis, and he was there at the Coliseum to call it. But anyway, yes, point is November 29, 1965, and it was Memphis, and this was about 2 years before Jerry Jarrett started booking and became an influence. And that card, the newspaper reported it drew about 5,500 people, which was at the Ellis Auditorium. This before the Mid-South Coliseum, probably 2,000, 2,500 short of a sellout. But in Memphis, from what we can gather from they didn't list the attendance a lot in those days in the newspaper, but every so often you'd see 3,800, 4,000, 5,000. So that was about what Memphis was weekly through the 60s until Jarrett took over, and then they moved to the Coliseum in 72, and that expanded their capacity from around 7,500 or 8,000 up to 11,000 something. And here on February 15, 1965, and I'll give you back your fucking program, your show, Dick the Bruiser got arrested on February 15th, 1965 by Memphis police. Would you like to hear about it?
Yeah.
When officers J.D. Williams and E.O. Petrie went to the auditorium to police a wrestling match, they probably didn't anticipate they would pick up a few bruises of their own at the hands of Dick the Bruiser. The Bruiser, whose real name is Richard Alice, 30, of Indianapolis, was in Memphis last night to wrestle Pat O'Connor.
And that's not his real name.
No, it's Atlas, but
well, it's William. It's not even Richard.
Well, there you go. So, during the match, O'Connor got thrown out of the ring. I turned my back on the ring to keep the crowd off O'Connor when I was struck from behind by Dick the Bruiser, said Officer Williams in his report today. Officer Pittry, joining in the fray, got kicked by the Bruiser. The officers called for help and arrested Alice, escorted him first to his dressing room to change clothes and then to jail. Alice put up $26 forfeits each on charges of disorderly conduct and assault and battery, got out of jail, and then apologized to the officers. And what a card that was. Wilbur Snyder versus Ronnie Etchison, Dick the Bruiser versus Pat O'Connor, Alex Perez versus Rocky Smith, and for the World Tag Team title, Kurt and Carl Von Bronner with Saul Weingroff against Bobby and Lee Fields, the Fields brothers.
Hey, in terms of what we were talking about before with Atlanta, so obviously the Mid-South Coliseum opens. When did the Ellis Auditorium actually close?
Well, about the same time as the Mid-South Coliseum had been there. I'm not sure what year it opened.
It was there for the Beatles, so that was 65?
Around about 65, 64, the first American tour, 66, the big one. But wrestling had always been at Ellis Auditorium because that's where it had been since fucking 30s or 40s. And at that time, the audience, the promoters felt they wouldn't go to the Coliseum because downtown in those days, everybody walked. You didn't need public transportation. You didn't need a car. And especially the audience after the late 50s and Sputnik, the audience was heavily African-American. They all lived in the downtown area. The regular fans that had been accustomed to going to the Ellis for years and years would go there. The promoters didn't think that people would drive out to what was especially then the suburbs. Now Memphis is just huge, but the suburbs, pay for parking potentially, go to a different building. As Teeny used to say, the wrestling fan is a creature of habit. And changing buildings in a town almost never happened once one was established unless you had a really big show that had to go somewhere or you lost your other building like they did in Atlanta with City Auditorium. They did the same thing in Memphis with the Ellis Auditorium. That was torn down to make now what stands there, or what did stand there, I haven't been lately, was the Cook Convention Center, which Jared would run when the Coliseum wasn't available, like for the Mid-South Fair or certain things.
What about in 77?
Yeah, well, in 77, Nick's office still had the Mid-South Coliseum contract in his name. So when Jarrett split off, he knew he not only had to go to a new TV station, he had to go to a new building. And the only other building in town was the Cook Convention Center. And that period of time from April of 77 for about, 8-10 weeks until Nick gave up, those are the only wrestling events that have ever drawn at the Cook Convention Center. Jared was doing, according to the newspapers, Mr. Coffee was the manager. He may have sweetened it a little bit, but yeah, we've seen pictures and video. They were doing 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people in the Cook Convention Center because that was the only place to go see Lawler and the stars of Jarrett's program. Nick stayed at the Mid-South Coliseum and ran like 6 or 7 shows, and I think the last one got down to under 500 people in an 11,000-seat building. So he pulled out, and as soon as he pulled out, the Coliseum, who had wanted to do business with Jarrett anyway, immediately gave Jarrett the first date as soon as they heard Nick was pulling out. And that first date was April. Well, so it was 6 weeks. He split off the first part of March, and the first show that Jarrett ran in the Coliseum was April 24th. And that was with Rocky Johnson and Harley Race, Lawler and Jack Briscoe. Eddie Graham was a guest backstage. Dusty was on the show. He brought in everybody from the NWA, but Ron Fuller sent people from Knoxville. It was a big event, jacked up ticket prices to show that he was making a statement that he was the wrestling promotion in Memphis. But then after that, the only time, again, every time that he went to the Cook Convention Center, I was there on one show in 1982. The house was $14,000. That was maybe 2,500 to not even 3,000 people. And it was the fill-in place so the reverse became true. Once the people got used to going to the Mid-South Coliseum, they wouldn't go back downtown. And 10 years later, downtown had changed and was not the place in Memphis that you necessarily wanted to be late at night. So it kind of, what goes around comes around. But that's the situation is they were afraid to move, but once that they did, it didn't even take a year, and they had a sellout with Jackie Fargo and Al Green in the hair match. That was Jarrett's first big push to sell out the Mid-South Coliseum in 1972.
Well, there it is. Guess the program. I think I did all right.
You did pretty good. You did better than I thought you were going to.
Well, I don't know what that says, but, after something like this, I'm not going to lie, I'm very much considering just going to sleep.
Well, you're going to have to find something to keep you awake, because we already know what can put you to sleep. Besides the sound of my voice, that's our friends at Beam and the delicious product that they have manufactured to make all of us have a restful night's sleep. If you're not sleeping good, Brian, it can cause weight gain, mood issues, poor mental health, lower productivity, felony charges. All of those things can come from not getting enough sleep. If you sleep less than 6 to 7 hours a night, it's linked to a reduced white blood cell count. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but if you don't sleep enough, you don't have enough white blood cells, and then you can't fight off the illness and diseases and viruses and bacteria and famines and plagues that are all around, the monkeypox. So you got to get a good night's sleep. And with Beam, you don't even have to do it naturally. You can let them do it for you. The good old-fashioned way, with drugs. No, folks, there's no drugs involved in this.
No, there's no drugs involved in this, and it's not the good old-fashioned way. What's wrong with you?
I beat you with that. There's no drugs involved in this. What this is natural sleep-promoting premium ingredients. They've been triple lab tested. There's no THC, but don't let that stop you, folks. You wake up refreshed. As a matter of 98% of people surveyed fall asleep faster when taking Beam Dream, and 99% of people experience better sleep quality. It's just that nagging 1% that wake up in Turkish prisons 6 months later with a long beard.
No, that's
all you got to do. It's delicious, delicious hot cocoa. All you got to do is mix the Beam Dream powder into hot water or milk. Milk gives a little more body. You just stir it up and you enjoy it right before bedtime. Right before bedtime, right before a major surgery. If you're going to have your lungs taken out, take a sip of this Beam Dream. They won't even have to give you the anesthetic, folks. Propofol ain't got nothing on this shit. If Michael Jackson had known about Beam, we'd still be not stopping till we got enough to this very day.
Yes, we would. He was a pedophile.
I forgot about that part. Well, you can find out, folks, why Forbes and the New York Times are all talking about Beam, not Michael Jackson or any allegations, but they're talking about Beam. And if you don't love it, you can get your money back guaranteed. If you can find these people, it's a lot easier to order something off the website and send them money. But nevertheless, they'll give you your money back guaranteed if you don't love it. And we use it here at the house. I sleep like a baby. Wake up once an hour crying and pissing the bed. But Stacy loves it. She swears by it. I see her cup of Beam constantly sitting there waiting for whenever she's tired of listening to me. She just takes a sip of that, falls over face first in the TV room, and I just kind of throw a blanket over her and leave her laying there until she gets up and wanders off. But if you can't fall asleep or wake up during the night or don't wake up refreshed or have side effects of no sleep, or if you're addicted to chemical sleep aids or noisy neighbors that wake you up with their wild, perverted sex parties, please send your address and phone number to me. Or if you think sleep aids make you groggy or you can't sleep when you travel, all these things can be helped, assisted even by the beneficial compounds naturally found in CBD, which is involved in the Beam premium product. It's a functional wellness brand, Beam is, that makes products for sleep, calm, focus, energy, hydration, and recovery. So there's all kinds of products that you can benefit from in addition to the Dream Powder. You got to go to see all of these things at shopbeam.com. That's BEAM, shopbeam.com/JCE. Use the code JCE at checkout and get $20 off. Shopbeam.com/JCE. Use the code JCE for $20 off of the Beam Dream Powder. And then let us know if you remember how you do and how you like it. Shopbeam.com after you /JCE, get out of the car, cut off your Slauson, use the code JCE, get $20 off. I'm telling you, you won't know what hit you, folks, when you get good sleep at night.
Nothing will hit you. You'll know what it is. It's Beam, and it's wonderful.
That's what I said. You won't know what hit you. Nothing will hit you. That's why you won't know. Beam.
Well, Beam will certainly put you down, but let's get everyone back up here. We have questions, we have topics, we have songs. We must have multiple things. We already played a game. We can't do more games, I don't think. Are you ready for topics and questions and fun?
Sure. It's your show.
Jim, I'm not sure how much of this you would have seen, but apparently Ronda Rousey and Nattie Neidhart went back and forth a little bit on Twitter. Some people were questioning what's a work and what's a shoot. Obviously, they've been working together. We just had a review of a match they had in, I think, New Mexico. Have you seen any of this?
I've just heard just brief things, just a smidgen, a whisper that they sniped at each other on the Twitter machine.
That they did, and I'm going to right now click on the original link here because I'm not sure what set it off. It appears Ronda Rousey just tweeted out one of the YouTube links for the Neidharts, Nattie Neidhart and her sister, their YouTube channel. And she said, "Some needs to tell you your discount OnlyFans sister fetish YouTube channel is weird and embarrassing." Obviously, a couple of words may have been left out
Not
there.
to mention her grammar is weird and embarrassing. But so now, as background, Nattie and her sister have an OnlyFans channel where they do their content or whatever in pictures, but we have no reason to believe there's any pornography going on here, do we?
I think it's just a YouTube channel, and she was saying it's a
YouTube channel.
Bootleg. I'm looking at the videos here. Obviously, there's nothing pornographic. There are, some mildly suggestive images, like Nattie and her sister in bikini tops, but nothing risque at all, really. I can't say
So it's not an OnlyFans. Ronda was just knocking it as an OnlyFans ripoff type of thing.
No, look, I'm sure the fact that Nattie and her sister are both women and wrestling fans are weird, creepy people, that they probably have wrestling fans who treat this like an OnlyFans. But from what I'm seeing here, it appears to be YouTube.
Well, but Ronda's against it.
Ronda's against it. So Nattie saw that tweet, retweeted it with this: "It was either do a channel with my hot sister or bring people to a rock at the back of my farm to cry and talk about conspiracy theories. I chose the sexy sister thing. Because we might be weird, but we're not as weird as your hot takes on life."
Wow.
And then she plugged in OnlyFans, so there is an OnlyFans for the sister, Jenny Neidhart.
Well, there you go. So, but the point is, Ronda apparently, we've heard that Ronda has some different beliefs on the various things that go on, right? Is she one of the space alien people, or is she the QAnon, or is she what variety or genre of crackpotness does Ronda subscribe to? Because did she do something where she actually brought people to a rock in her back? I'm sure the listeners are going to fill us in on a bunch of details that we can update in the next week or two. But is Ronda Rousey taking people on tours of rocks in the backyard of her farm, Browsey Acres?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that you know it is Browsey Acres, she must be doing some sort of content from...
Well, she was showing, the whole time she was off from wrestling, there'd be pictures of her feeding pigs and sheep and wildlife and things of that nature. She was a farm girl. Her and And Travis Brown, the MMA guy, is her husband. So Brown, Rousey got to Browsey Acres. That's the majority of footage that I saw of Ronda over the past few years.
What do you think of the idea now? And again, this is a bit of a hypersensitive time because of the attempt to overthrow the government, but taking that out of the equation.
Yeah, just that minor little thing.
But what do you think now about the fact that so many wrestlers, their political beliefs or the conspiracies they believe, whatever it may be, that they're out there so publicly? You know, in the past, you watch NWA wrestling, you had to guess what Ric Flair was, or if you watch WWF, what was Hulk Hogan? Is he a Democrat or Republican? You really wouldn't know. I mean, he loved America, so I guess, you know, the Republicans would grab a hold of him and say he's ours.
Well, whichever side, I mean, one really does and the other one claims to for votes, so.
The fact that this is happening on Twitter, and again, I said we don't know what's at work and what isn't. It seems a little stiff to be at work, but what do you think about the idea that someone puts their politics out there and then someone throws it back in their face?
Well, I mean, if you're going to put something out there that is throwable, backable, then you got to expect that. And, you know, for the people who they've made up all kinds of excuses. Well, people have Trump derangement syndrome, or these people are socialists and they're in the corner of China or whatever, to explain why the normal, sane, average people call bullshit on a lot of this fucking shit that they make up. Meanwhile, the government's being overthrown on January 6th, but they think it's a tourist attraction. But meanwhile, they're scared of the non-existent marauding hordes of rabid immigrants that are pouring in across the country, committing rape and mayhem everywhere, when that actually doesn't take place. And, you know, they can watch one on TV and they hear about the other one from their uncle's Facebook. So naturally, they believe their uncle. The point is, it's not just wrestlers. And I've said this before, and maybe I ought to make it a t-shirt. People were always this stupid, we just didn't have Twitter. There was no way for the average person that you see in New York sitting on a cardboard box in the corner of the subway, or in West Tennessee on the front porch of a goddamn barbecue joint, or somebody in the parking lot of a gas station that's just gone. But you would never have any way to know about them or contact them or have them contact you before social media. So we're finding out now that everybody was always this stupid. We just didn't have Twitter. And with instant communication and the social media and the multitudinous news platforms that will tell people either what's actually happening or, if they so desire, just what they want to hear, it's made all these people seem normal. And I meant Trump's election made horrible, awful, stupid assholes emboldened to be in public the stupid, horrible, awful assholes that they used to just be in private. They used to know, yeah, I really think this, but if I say it, shit, people will not like me because I sound like a fucking moron. But now that there's so many other fucking morons out there that in most cases are even worse than that particular guy, he said, well, I can say all this stupid shit out loud that I really believe because I'm not unusual anymore. So now we find out that it's not just some idiot that thinks there's Jewish space lasers or whatever the fuck. There's multitudes of them, and they elect their own kind to public office. So there you go. I don't think it's just the boys. I think it's everybody.
All right, Jim, we have some news that has come in. This is being reported on pwinsider.com.
Oh, I shudder wait a minute, hold on. What's happened now?
What a glamorous entrance there, but Mike Johnson reporting, Stephen De La Roche, the attorney representing WWE Hall of Famer Tammy Sunny Sitch in her criminal proceedings regarding her DUI manslaughter charges in Florida, filed a motion asking the court's permission to withdraw as her legal representation on June 16th, citing an impasse has been reached in the handling of the case, making it impossible for the client and attorney to continue to work cooperatively on the case. The client has not complied with the terms of the employment agreement with this attorney. The client will not be prejudiced if the undersigned is permitted to withdraw. The court
now, wait, hold on. What does that mean?
That means it won't hurt Tammy if this guy withdraws and she has to get another attorney.
It won't hurt the case. Nobody knows that her attorney has already said, fuck it, I can't do anything with this, I quit.
The court has yet to approve or deny De La Roche's request. Sitch has been incarcerated for 39 days and counting while awaiting trial, which is yet to be officially scheduled.
Oh boy, well, I can see she's as easy to work with as she's always been. So now her lawyer says, fuck it, I quit. And this is not exactly a position you want to be in this situation, where you have one lawyer that's supposed to be on your side and he quits. Failing to uphold the employment contract sounds like I didn't get a check, but failure to be able to work cooperatively on this case sounds like that Tammy is telling him how to defend her based on what she believes in her head, I guess, that people will actually buy into. And the seizure story, I don't think is going to fucking fly, that she had on Twitter, or I was only going 10 miles an hour, or any of the other things that she said over the past however many years when she gets herself in these goddamn predicaments and just lies out of them or tries to. And here we go again.
It's going to be really difficult to find an attorney that goes for what I'm going to assume is going to be a scorched earth policy. That's the thing. You could say you want to do all these things and you want to fight it all these ways. You're going to actually have to find an attorney that will do that with you.
Well, and also, again, from the statements that she's made publicly, which she shouldn't have done to begin with, she's kind of boxed her defense into a corner, because then if she comes out with another story besides what she said on Twitter or wherever it was, then the opposing counsel, as they say, are going, well, why didn't you say this on such and such date? If your story now is you were at a convention, the Sons of the Desert, again, we saw testimony. The January 6th commission hearings. Nobody wanted to represent Trump because they didn't want to go down with the ship. They didn't want to lie and lose their legal licenses like Ronnie Giuliani. Yeah. Rudy's older brother, Ronnie.
Yes. Jack Pfeffer presents Mayor Ronnie Giuliani.
Rudy Giuliani got disbarred because he was lying for pig shit. And when you go into court and you're a licensed attorney, you can't just say complete bullshit. If it's provable, it's bullshit. And so it's the same thing. Now, your lawyers quit because they don't want to get this on them. And she's going to have a hard time finding anybody competent that will do whatever it is she wants them to do, which probably is not conducive to finding out the truth of the matter. But there you go.
Jim, another topic I'm going to bring up, and several people have emailed this in, and I was kind of surprised by it, but I think we should kind of put it to bed because it's pretty easy to put to bed for a few reasons.
Well, let's give it a cup of beam.
Well, we could do that, a cup of beam.
It'll never get up again.
It will get up again when it's ready to get up. It'll have a great night's sleep. But what I meant to say, and I didn't mean for you to go off again on this tangent.
How do you know what this thing is going to have a great day or a great night or not? This thing could be troubled.
Well,
maybe up walking the floor instead of having a peaceful night's sleep.
Jim, the listeners who have gotten in touch and various other people on Twitter who think that the Vince McMahon stepping down thing is a work.
Oh, boy.
Can we explain why that is completely impossible?
Yeah, it's because of the publicly traded thing again. What did they think the investigation is already for? Vince doing things he didn't tell people about, and or telling people he did one thing and did another. You can't tell the people, like the Wall Street Journal and all of the news outlets, in a publicly traded company, the CEO is being investigated and is stepping aside unless it's true. There's an actual, it's not just about being a wrestling promotion. There's, Brian, you may know, since you're a financial wizard of your own, what's the exact name of the statute or whatever, but you can't make false statements like that about a publicly traded company, or you would then be investigated by the shareholders, which is what they're already doing.
It's defrauding the investors if you make false statements.
Yes, so no, and believe me, I would have liked to have been there in the room when somebody suggested to Vince McMahon that the angle that would involve him being publicly linked as a fornicator and stepping down from his position as running the WWE. I would have loved to seen that pitch. And I'd have loved to, if we'd have been on the fourth floor, then we'd have had a lot of time to look at the guy that pitched it as he was on his way down past the third and the second and the first and then the parking garage and then finally the sidewalk below. No, this is not a work. Whatever they do to try to explain this, there may be some elements of work, but this itself is not a work. Can you concur that with me, Brian?
Yeah, in storyline, if they did something where Vince McMahon was going to go away, that's allowed. But to put out a statement and to put out comments from the board of directors, put out official corporate information that Vince McMahon is stepping down because of this investigation, his daughter's the interim CEO, if any of that wasn't legit, they are fucked completely.
Yeah.
So it's all legit.
And he's been fucked in the past, and apparently he enjoyed that $3 million worth, but now he'd be fucked in a different way that probably wouldn't be so pleasurable.
Well, on this topic, Jim, here's a question, and several people surprisingly have sent in a variation of this. Sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Andy in Liverpool. With Vince McMahon stepping down as WWE chairman, can they not just shave him bald, get him to grow a beard, and have Ezekiel McMahon run WWE?
That's been on Twitter. That was a meme, as the kids say. There was a picture of Vince with this obviously fake beard photoshopped on, and it was like, meet my older brother or younger brother, Elias or Ezekiel McMahon. He'll be running things. If it were only that simple, where's Lance McMahon when you need another McMahon? Davey Haskins became a member of the Rich family.
If you could create a fake McMahon, who would it be?
Oh, my God. You know who would have been a fantastic fake McMahon?
Who?
Think about this. John Cena.
Why?
Because look at him. He looks like he has the striking genetics that the McMahon family has. He's a brilliant orator. He has a deep voice when he wants to. He could have carried that off. Hey, pal. He could have been a great fake McMahon. He could have been Rod McMahon. We never saw Rod.
You know who I always thought should play Vince McMahon if they ever made a movie about him? You know the actor Christopher McDonald?
Help me.
Grease 2? Happy Gilmore?
Well, wait a minute. Let me go get my anniversary deluxe Blu-ray edition of Grease 2.
Happy Gilmore? Dirty Work?
Okay, I need a picture to...
If you saw him, you would probably get it if you heard his voice. But if you took Vince McMahon in the mid-90s when he got off the gas and all of a sudden he had a neck, like this guy looks just like him. This guy would have been perfect to play him. The steroid period is the problem.
Vince, I always was able to see Vince's neck.
No, but when he got off the gas and go look at when he was at CAC and whatever that was, 96, his neck is long and skinny in a way I've never seen it before. And he's trim. It's the trimmest we've ever seen Vince McMahon.
He did go crazy. And when he first had the first match, when he actually got in the ring, what was it? Was that 97 or 98?
90. I want to say 97, but it may have been 98.
Because he started training. Because in 96, we would get there on a Wednesday morning, and he had already had a workout in his home gym just by himself. And when he worked at the office, which was every other day of the week besides Wednesday that we weren't on the road, then he worked out in the office gym. There was a full gym in the office. That was to save money in 95, they took the water coolers out of the office, but they kept the entire full gym, and they had a guy that was there as a trainer specifically for anybody who wanted to work out. He worked out there. And I mean, how old was Vince 25 years ago? He's 50. He looked great to me for a 50-year-old man. But I don't really pay attention to things like that. But all of a sudden, a couple years later, by the time he had that first match and he knows he's going to be out there working, have the tank top on, whatever, he started, and now you hear the stories and have heard him for the last 15 years. He's got his own personal trainer. They work out together at all odd hours. He's, lifting these massive amounts of weight. As he works out more, he was always a workout guy. Obviously, that's the big thing with Vince. But I think he's worked out more over the last 20 years than he used to back then. So, baby, just, maybe he's trying to reverse the effects of Father Time. But he forgot motherfucker, and she's the bitch. You can beat Father Time, but you can't beat motherfucker.
All right, that's a new way. I've never heard it put that way before. Well, Jim, on that, let's move on to our next one here.
You've never heard that?
You could beat Father Time, but you can't beat motherfucker?
Yep, you've never heard that.
No. Have you heard that, or did you just make it up?
That's because I just said it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Jim, last week on the show, we did a Jim Cornette promo review of Jay Slingblade or Switchblade, whatever the hell he is, White.
Wait a minute. Hold on now. What did we say, and what is it? Slingblade, Switchblade?
I think we said Slingblade, but it's Switchblade. Either way, it's stupid.
One of these, he's slinging them, switching them, he's pulling them out. You got a knife there? Got a knife in your pocket?
He's not here this week, but for this week's promo review, I have Zack Saber Jr. talking about his upcoming match with Bryan Danielson. Have you ever heard Zack Saber Jr. talk? And I guess you've seen him wrestle.
I'm pretty sure I haven't heard him talk. I probably have seen some clips. I can't remember, truthfully, having seen any complete matches of Mr. Saber Jr. Because he don't wrestle in this country, does he?
No, he's from England. He wrestles mostly in New Japan on a worldwide stage. And he's traditionally been very, very skinny, although extremely talented in the ring. I haven't seen him in a few years. I don't know how he's filled out at all, but
I've heard he was good. But since he doesn't wrestle on TV here, I haven't seen him like many, many Americans.
Well, here's a promo about Bryan Danielson. It's about a minute and a half. Let's hear what you think of this.
All righty.
Oxygen thieves. House of dickheads. Absolute oxygen thieves. Ridiculous, isn't it? Those belts, not so long ago, were actually worth something. Goto and bloody Yoshihashi, of all people, raised the level of those belts from the gutter. Now they're absolutely worthless. Useless pricks. Useless pricks.
What?
Oh, I'm talking about useless pricks. Yeah, I've got a bone to pick with you guys. Senshu. Last week, after Budokan, I was trying to be nice and subtle. I hummed the theme to Final Countdown, very beautifully. But I changed the lyrics. Are we heading to Venus? But I changed it to, are we heading to Chicago? Presumably because I've got the voice of an angel. You bastards edited it out, didn't you? So, no more time for subtlety. American Dragon. Oh, Dragon bollocks. Can you take some time out your busy golfing schedule with the Blackpool Country Club to find out who the best technical wrestler in the world is? But I'll tell you now, darling, it's fucking me.
Well, there it is, Zack Saber Jr.
Okay. Well, obviously, this is after another match in New Japan. He's blowed up again, right? Like the last guy was.
Correct.
And also, at least he wasn't like, fuck you, motherfucker. You useless pricks. Again, it's the blowed up thing. They're starting and stopping, but more than that, he's trying to, he's trying to do some flowery material. I sang you the Final Countdown, but the voice, the lilting, let's face it. Anybody from Britain, the United Kingdom, that part of the world that has that accent just sounds so polite. It sounds like a polite accent. Then you've got, he's up here. He's like somebody squeezing his balls. And then it sounded like Dale Spear like this one. It sounded like Terry Thomas talking to Doris Day in a 60s comedy movie. Oh, you useless pricks. I don't know what to do. I wasn't intimidated by that verbal dressing down. Were you, Brian? If you were the target of that verbal disembowelment that he just gave there, would you be shaking like a dog shitting peach seeds?
No.
I don't know. Can we hear any of these people? Do they talk before they wrestle? Do they ever talk before they wrestle where they've got all their oxygen? Because not only is it hindering their delivery, but I'm thinking possibly lack of oxygen to the brain might be what's resulting in some of this. Do they get to talk beforehand? How do the people know that they're mad at each other if they don't talk beforehand?
I'm sure they do some talking beforehand, but those are not the interviews.
We don't have any of them.
That's exactly right. But Jim, you brought up
what is oxygen face? What is that?
Was that what he was saying?
I thought he said oxygen face. You made an oxygen face. Is that the O face that I hear people talking about? We saw his O face? Oxygen face?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure we'll hear from the minions of Zack Saber Jr. We'll find out. But Jim, he alluded to Chicago and Bryan Danielson. Of course, AEW has the Forbidden Door pay-per-view event, as someone just informed me a little while ago. It's this weekend on the show.
Yes, just coming up just like that.
Snuck right up on us. I have the lineup here. You want to do a review of, or a preview of some of the matches that have already been announced?
Yes, because I'd like to actually hear you say what matches have been announced, because I don't really know what they're going to be. Jericho announced a 6-man tag match, and he was either uttering names of people I've never heard of or having a series of audible small strokes on live television. So maybe you can help slow it down a little bit and tell me who's doing what here to who.
Well, first I got to go to another site. I'm on the Sporting News website, which you would think would have it, but the only matches they have listed are Moxley versus Tanahashi for the interim AEW World title, and Pac versus to be announced versus New Japan Pro Wrestling Rep for the AEW All Atlantic Championship.
Oh, God.
Let me see if Wikipedia has any more here. Okay, here we go.
AEW has a website, don't they?
Let's see what they have on their website.
Do they put the card for their pay-per-view coming up in less than a week on their own website?
If we go to their website, events, upcoming events, Forbidden Door, it shows me where to get tickets. It doesn't actually show me the card.
Here's where to buy food. What kind of food? We don't know, but you can get it here.
Here are results. Here are rankings. I'm not seeing the actual card here.
Wait a minute. You mean to tell me, and I'm not even going to get on here and try to do it with you because you're more technically versed than I am, but it's not readily available on their own website what the card is for the pay-per-view that they are selling this weekend, is what you're telling me.
The banner, which has 3 different things it rotates to, one of them is AEW Dynamite results, one is Double or Nothing results or Order the Replay, and one is AEW Rampage results. And then under that, they're advertising Wednesday, August 10th, Minneapolis, Minnesota, the debut in that building. And then there's nothing here for the pay-per-view, actually. That is weird. There's nothing here. Interim AEW World Championship match set for Forbidden Door on June 12th. That was uploaded. But anyway.
All righty then.
If you're still there, let's get back to this card that apparently is listed on Wikipedia.
And where are you? You're finding the card off of Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Instead of AEW's own website. All righty.
That's right. And one of the matches that's not listed here, but it was just teased, Bryan Danielson and Zack Saber Jr. Sounds like they were teasing that. What do you think?
But it's not listed there.
But it's not listed on Wikipedia.
But Danielson is hurt, is he not? We heard that. He hasn't been on TV in the past couple weeks. He was banged up, I believe the quote was. Out for a few weeks. Think he's going to make it?
I don't know. Maybe that's why they didn't announce anything. But here are the matches announced.
I will be more than happy to not let Zack Saber Jr.'s fucking Percival Pinkerton promo cloud my view of his work if I get to see him, but maybe we won't see him.
Matches listed here so far. In a three-way winner-takes-all tag team match for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship and the IWGP Tag Team Championship.
Oh, good Lord.
FTR, the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, versus the United Empire, Great-O-Khan and Jeff Cobb, the IWGP Tag Team Champions, versus Roppongi Vice, Trent Beretta, and Rocky Romero.
Well, now, wait. Okay, but wait. FTR are the Ring of Honor champions, and Roppongis are the New Japan Pro Wrestling Tag Team Champions. So they're both titles.
No.
What?
Great-O-Khan and Jeff Cobb are the New Japan Tag Team Champions.
Okay, Grado and Cobb are so both titles are on the line, but they're not held by the same team.
Correct.
Just a bunch of tag team titles up, including one that's never been defended here before.
Are FTR about to win the IWGP tag titles?
Goddamn, they better, because, I mean, what happens if somebody beats the other team? Nobody loses anything.
As long as this doesn't build up to the Bucks beating FTR in the deciding third match to win all of the belts, I'm okay with it.
Oh, Christ. I don't know what we're going to see. It's going to be a three-way. FTR, great, but I don't know if they're that great. We'll see what happens.
In a match for the AEW Women's World Championship, Thunder Rosa, the champion, defends against Toni Storm.
Oh, shucks. I hope we were going to see a rematch with Marina Shafir. Rosa and Storm might not be too bad. If I'm not going to watch the three-way tag team match, because why would I? Because FTR's in it. I may watch this one also.
For the IWGP US Heavyweight Championship, a rather puzzling booking move, Will Ospreay defends against Orange Cassidy.
What? I mean, again, this guy is supposed to be the best wrestler in the world in some quarters, according to some people. Or at least he was at one time until Twinkle Toes came along. And they've obviously, AEW wants to work with New Japan Pro Wrestling, because they've gone to this length and he brought all these people that nobody's ever heard of here to throw them out there on their television for 2 weeks. And they bring I guess Ospreay's a top guy in New Japan, or he wouldn't hold one of their titles. And they put him against the Mascot in a joke match. And everybody knows he's not going to win that belt because New Japan wouldn't have that. So yes, I think they said it was supposed to be another match and somebody else is hurt or whatever. But my God, you don't have a capable, legitimate wrestler on the entire roster that's not busy, that could wrestle old Ostrich. It's Mark booking, because you know what? Nick Goulas didn't book his son George like this. Even George was not as annoying and stuck into everything and out there constantly ruining everybody else's matches. And at least he tried. He wasn't any good, but he tried. This guy doesn't try, and he's everywhere just because the promoter likes him. Is he going to be out there with Ospreay? Tony said sell. You're supposed to sell for me because Tony said. Well, I don't understand the whole thing. Why piss off your business partners, making one of their top guys lower himself to this level? Except it's Tony's favorite wrestler. He gets a tickle out of the guy. And so he's blind to everything else going on around him. Go ahead.
In six-man tag team action, otherwise known as a trios match in the world of AEW in the AEW language, Les Sex Gods of Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara with Ty Conti, along with Minoru Suzuki, will take on Eddie Kingston, Wheeler Yuta, and Shota Umino.
As Shota Umino, that's where I thought that he had finally, the aneurysm had broken loose and the clot had traveled to the brain. When he says, Shoto Animo, I thought he was saying, show me the money. Golly, I wonder who might win that. Wouldn't you know who's going to win the pony, Brian? I think we should bet the farm on Jericho. They just turned Sammy heel again. and Jericho being Jericho, and who's their partner, Suzuki?
Yes, Minoru Suzuki.
So he and Kingston will stand there and allow each other to hit each other over and over and over and over and over. And then they'll try to shine Sammy a little bit, and they'll probably, if they're smart and have any sense, beat the unheard of Japanese guy on the babyface team.
Yeah, Eddie Kingston and Suzuki will definitely be just beating the shit out of each other for a while in that match. You'd know that.
But it'll be phony at the same time. They will hurt themselves on purpose, and it will look incredibly phony because they will do it on purpose. And I can't figure that out. Save my life.
Jim, in a 4-way match for the inaugural AEW All-Atlantic Championship.
Oh, boy.
Pac will take on Miro, will take on either Malachi Black or Pento Obscuro, and they will take on either Clark Connors or Tomohiro Ishii.
Wait, Clark Connors, the rifleman? Lucas McCain himself? Is he gonna come out? He's 6'6", and he's got that rifle. Old Clark, is he going to have Sheriff Micah Torrance with him? What about his little son, Mark McCain?
I don't know. It's a crossover
Who
match.
the fuck is Clark Connors? Have we even heard that name before?
No.
And he's wrestling with, our friend Tomohiro Ishii?
Well, apparently they're wrestling, and the winner of that match will be in this 4-way match.
So the thing's 6 days away, and we've only got 2 of the 4 participants for the new title, and none of these people, it makes no sense for any of them to interact with each other.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that.
It's just a 4-way match. Well, they all won the tournament, and now they're just in a 4-way, and they're going to clusterfuck the screen up. And
I'm pulling for Ishii because I feel like even though the flag is already shown on the belt, I think Japan should be represented in the All-Atlantic Championship match.
I'm saying that's got to disqualify Ishii because he's not an Atlantic fellow. So right there's a loophole.
And of course, the main event for the interim AEW.
Are we going to watch this show?
This sounds horrible. The main event for the interim AEW World Championship, Jon Moxley versus Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Boy, I mean, again, there's a contingent of New Japan fans in this country that will probably be overjoyed to see that. But is this the classic example of preaching to the choir? Is there a chance in hell that anybody that doesn't already watch and is familiar with New Japan Pro Wrestling will be interested in this show? Because half these people have not been heard of. Most of the AEW talent that anybody would pay to see is not on it. Punk, MJF, where's Wardlow? There's no Starks, Hobbs. There's no the Hardley Boys aren't on the thing. Twinkle Toes is still out, thank God. Point is, less than half of the AEW talent, a bunch of people we've never heard of, Moxley and Tanahashi. If you're a fan of New Japan, as I said, I'm sure will be a great thing. But is this where we find out, okay, this many AEW fans are also New Japan wrestling fans? And we see what'd they do, 150,000 for their last pay-per-view. If this one does 80, are we to assume that around 55% of the people that like AEW are also familiar with New Japan Pro Wrestling? How much money do people have that they can get these pay-per-views all the fucking time?
Especially right now with inflation and everything happening with the economy. The other interesting thing I want to see is what's the number going to be for Wednesday? Last week it nosedived. And I'm sure there was some competition, but nothing heavy, nothing that would cause hundreds of thousands of people to turn off the TV. It's been the build-up to this New Japan show and the loss of the stars people cared about, like Danielson, Punk, and MJF.
Yeah, well, Danielson, there's no Cole. There's a variety of, whether you like them or not, there's a variety of top names in AEW aren't on this program. And I said this to Stacy last night during the world-famous chicken finger dinner. because I was telling her she listens to the show, but she's behind a little bit. She said, what are they doing? And I said, they're doing this co-promotion. I said, you know what it would have, when we went, Delirious and I went and asked from Sinclair and specifically Greg the office boy, the budget to fly some of the Japanese guys in for Final Battle 2011. And he took the piss out of it. Well, it's New York. We should sell out on them. I said, I'm thinking about the internet pay-per-view. Well, I can't describe the value of these Japanese and the tickets and blah, blah, blah. And then they basically, Ring of Honor got a gift. New Japan said, hey, we'll fly our guys over. This was in what, 2013, 14? We'll fly our guys over. We'll pay for it. Just book them. We want them to be a big deal in the United States. But anyway, I told Stacy, I said, if I had got the Japanese guys that we wanted for Final Battle, you know what it would have looked like. We would have got 2 top guys and 2 upper card guys. We would have spent 4 to 6 weeks on television every week illustrating who those 3 or 4 people were, what they had done, and why they were going to be interacting with 3 or 4 of the Ring of Honor's top guys. And then the rest of it would have been a regular Ring of Honor show, because once you get past the 3 or 4 top guys, there's no way to familiarize your fans with that many different people and do it right. And so the law of diminishing returns would kick in and nobody would give a shit, except the people that were going to buy it anyway when you first announced it. But instead, what they've done is they've taken whoever they can fucking get and they've run them all in street clothes in 2 weeks of television to jump and beat up a bunch of other baby faces and heels in AEW that are now interacting with each other as teammates, even though they've never been involved with each other before, because some of them have worked for New Japan in the past and have some affiliation with somebody else. So you were reading this fucking book or you were watching this movie, but about 3/4 of the way through it, we just decided to stop, run a bunch of different people in, have all the people that you already know start liking the people they hate or hating the people they like. And then we're going to, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to put them all together and see if you can figure out who's who. Have I encapsulated this promotional strategy approximately as you've seen it, Brian?
I think so.
Well, there you go. So good luck to them.
You know, the other thing to think about if we're going to have to watch this thing is watching it's one thing, but it becomes really unbearable due to the commentary. This is going to be Excalibur unleashed, just yelling out names and moves and it's all happening. What do you think, Tony? Oh my God, this is so exciting, so excited. What do you think, Jim Ross? I don't want to be here. And that's every single match. But there's an option. You want to watch the wrestling but not listen to the wrestling. You can put something else in your ears and listen to something pleasurable.
Boy, I tell you what, before I'd listen to excrement called the New Japan AEW co-promotion, I believe I would take large lead 10-penny nails and stick them in my ears. But folks, you can do something that's not nearly as painful and potentially more pleasurable, and that's what you can do is stick the Raycon everyday wireless earbuds in your ears, because they look, feel, and sound better than ever with those optimized gel tips. And I'll tell you what, you just keep these things in the refrigerator, and then as soon as they firm up, they'll shake a little bit, and you stick them in your ears, and they've got all kinds of flavors. They've got the lime and the strawberry. Jell-O is always been one of my favorite desserts, and now they're making these ear tips on the Raycon wireless earbuds out of Jell-O. It's amazing.
No, they're not. Don't say that. Of course, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Jell-O is short for gelatin, right? That's what gel is, G-E-L, gelatin, so they're gelatin.
No, it's two different things. It doesn't.
You can nibble on them while you're listening to your music.
Not.
You can have a snack. You shouldn't eat the Raycons.
You shouldn't, and you shouldn't. Just don't.
Don't eat the Raycons, folks.
Put them in your ear.
Stay away from the brown acid too, folks. The Raycons, whether they're in your ear as Jell-O dessert or as a nice way to listen to music and podcasts, they're also available with the noise isolation and awareness modes, so you can immerse yourself in sound. You can just jump right in and And you can, if you hold your nose, you can go all the way underwater in the sound, or you can activate the awareness mode and you will know that you're drowning. Immediately, you'll not be able to breathe from that point on. Raycons also give you 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. Holy mackerel, I wish they made vibrators with that kind of capacity. And when you need to charge them up, it's super easy. You can even do it wirelessly. You just sit them in the middle of the floor and you point this special ray gun at the earbuds. They start glowing blue. And when they turn red, then you know they're recharged. But don't point this ray gun at any other living creatures or animals. And you get the same quality audio with the Raycons as other premium audio brands, but at half the price. That's right, you'll only pay half as much for the Raycon. They're only going to send you one earbud, but it sounds great. And if you are one of the lucky people that gets both the earbuds, you can throw these things off a 3-story building. You can throw them out in the rain. You can leave them in a snowstorm. You can feed them to the raccoons and the bears, and they'll still work afterwards. If you don't believe me, just wander out in the forest and put your ear up to the belly of every raccoon and or bear that you find, and you will hear Donna Summer's greatest hits playing out of their fucking gullets. Because these Raycon everyday wireless earbuds will not stop. They've got over 49,000 5-star reviews, folks. So right now, my guess is you're going to want to leave them a 5-star review too when you go to buyraycon. That's BUYRAYCON.com/JCE. You get 15% off your Raycon order. That's the earbuds, the gel tips, the optional raccoons and bears, whatever they got to sell you. You'll get 15% off with buyraycon.com/JCE.
And while the listeners can ignore Excalibur and his friends and listen to something else, you could also use this time watching whatever you're watching to listen to the Jim Cornette Experience and Jim Cornette's Drive Thru, no matter where you are.
That's a safe bet every time. I can't imagine the set of circumstances where I wouldn't want to listen to us instead of what I was looking at.
Well, Jim, I'm going to be honest, we have a couple of questions I'm going to read here, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. He has good questions, and he's a published author. We could use the rub.
He's an author.
Here's his first question. Chris Jericho recently explained the concept of the wizard character he is currently portraying. Jericho said, quote, "The wizard, what is it? Nothing. What is it? Everything. The character thinks he's a wizard. He can cast these spells in AEW and is the most popular performer and the best wrestler in the world, so that's basically a wizard."
That's a delusional fuckwit.
What are your thoughts on Jericho's take on his wizard character?
A wizard is a guy that wears a long robe with stars and moons on it and a big pointy hat and waves a magic wand and sparkly things emerge from it and magic tricks happen in front of your very eyes. That's a wizard, not a aging wannabe rock star that discovered flash paper. And what I don't understand, I thought we were going to get an explanation. The wizard, what is it? Nothing, everything. What is that? He's not the character. It's Chris Jericho. That's who he is. And everybody knows that it's Chris Jericho doing something else, which for a while was good. He didn't do the same thing for 30 years, but now it's every 3 weeks. And what the fuck? Take up collecting stamps if you've got a midlife crisis. But what about the way Chris Jericho is presenting himself that would make you think or want to believe that he's a wizard? It doesn't make sense. No. Do you understand what he just said there?
The gimmick doesn't make sense. His explanation doesn't make sense. I think it's just a bad idea, and he doesn't
He's not coming out saying poof and, things happen. Because then that would be as bad as Matt Hardy teleporting through time and space and changing clothes in an ice machine.
No, it's more about trying to get a cheap pop for him just saying randomly, "because I'm a wizard," during his promos.
Well, the Grand Wizard didn't say he was a wizard that often.
You made all the viewers disappear last week. What happened? That's something he pulled out of his hat.
They touched the remote and turned the channel.
Jim, we have another. Oh, that was really good. Jim, we have another question from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
I'm sure we do.
Adam Cole recently said the biggest reason he signed with AEW is his relationship with Britt Baker. What are your thoughts on Cole's personal relationship with Baker being the biggest reason for him leaving WWE? And what do you think about the growing number of high-profile relationships between male and female wrestlers in both companies?
Second question first. I mean, I'm happy if anybody's happy, but traditionally and historically, that's been a problem in the locker room since it started happening, because what happens when you break up? And you're, in the old days, there weren't that many women in the locker room to begin with, and most of them were already with one of the guys. That's how they got there to begin with. But in times where there was an unaffiliated female talent and with unaffiliated male talents, and they got together when the inevitable happens, you had to get rid of one of them. And usually the girl was the one that would go because she was less valuable to the roster. So now there's nowhere to go because they're all under contract for extended periods of time. So that may lead to some, and not just in the WWE, but in some of the other companies. And wouldn't it, oh God, what was their name? The tag team, the one guy that I said they had bad hair and prison tattoos. They were on NXT.
MSK.
MSK, yeah, if all these initials. His wife got mad at him for asking for a divorce, so she sent the picture out of him acting like Hitler and got him fired. That's the thing with people getting together and still being in the locker room. As far as the original part one of Charlie's question, how was it phrased exactly again?
Hold on, let me pull it up once again. I actually just took it off this page.
Well, okay, you're that short and done with Charlie?
Adam Cole recently said the biggest reason he signed with AEW is his relationship with Britt Baker.
The biggest reason, not the only reason, but the biggest reason. I mean, to me, the biggest reason would have probably been money unless it was close. If it was close, then yes, you'd want to go and work where your wife or spouse or significant other is working. But to me, in there somewhere between, I just want to work in the same place as my wife so we can travel together, and if the money's comparable, that would sway me in the right direction. But if maybe Adam's told on himself, I would have asked a little more of how am I going to be used? And because he was a top guy in NXT, but then again, they just disemboweled NXT. So they probably would have sabotaged him to begin with. But I would have been sitting down with Tony like I sat there when we talked to Vince McMahon in 1986 when we were in the Carolinas, me and the Midnight. Or like I talked to Jim Krog and Dusty Rhodes on the phone before we made that deal. How are you going to use us? Who are we going to work with? What might some of your plans be, and how are we going to be figured in? That type of thing. So again, if he wasn't happy in the WWE, let's say even wanted to take less money, before just saying, oh, I'd love to come there and work with Britt, he should have sat down with Tony and said, how are you going to use me? And if you have no ideas, maybe I need to give you some. Because now if he'd have done that and give more importance to what he was going to be doing on television rather than just, I'm going to be here, then we wouldn't have seen him systematically destroyed over the last, 4 months has it been now, 5 months, however long it's been, to the point where who gives a shit if he's around or not? They took a talent and completely neutralized him. Was that because he was just so tickled to come to work with Britt that he didn't bother to, and he didn't care about the money? He didn't bother to think, do you have ideas for me? What am I going to be doing? Who am I going to be interacting with? That's been the biggest problem. So that's something that I would have obviously spent more time on than apparently he did, because it's come back to bite him in the ass. And after this short a time, whatever length of contract he signed, he's useless now to the company. Nobody gives a shit. So I would have spent more time on that, but that's just me.
All right, Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Brian in Wiley, Texas. Where's Wiley, Texas? Do you know?
I don't have a goddamn clue.
I grew up watching world-class championship wrestling in the 80s in North Texas.
Okay, it's in North Texas, Brian.
And recently saw that there is a Von Erich movie in development with Zac Efron attached to star. Perhaps as Kevin. Maybe it's going to be set today with older Kevin looking back on his family. This is Brian from Wiley, Texas's opinions here. What are your thoughts on this possible movie? If you were a consultant, how would you cast or approach this story? What are your thoughts on Ross and Marshall's present and future potential in the industry? Can they get a shot in AEW or WWE? There's actually two topics there, I guess. Ross and Marshall.
Yeah, there's a lot all over the place there. I met Ross and Marshall in MLW, and they're great kids, and we've talked about them. They don't have any bad habits. They're family people, whole nine yards, very respectful, great athletes. They're not going to get a shot in the WWE because that horse has sailed, or that boat has left the barn.
And if they did, they wouldn't be Von Erichs. That name would be taken away from them right away.
Exactly. The WWE would take away the main thing that gets them attention, but also they're already in their 30s. They've got kids. They live in Hawaii in a beautiful place. They're not going to fucking move to Florida and go through the performance center. AEW, the same thing. The Von Erich boys, they probably could have been smoother workers than they are now if they'd have started earlier and not lived in paradise. But because they do, they're cut off from easy access to independent shows, just bopping over in the car to make $100 or less to work a show just to get experience. Yes, they can work out to their heart's content with their dad and diving off cliffs into the water to do moonsaults and stuff like that, but they never got the chance to get repetition, experience, go to a school to get different, or a training center to get different outlooks on things, and just build the muscle memory and do this over and over. They didn't get a chance to do that. So they've made shots, and they on a limited basis have made a name for themselves somewhat, but they're not going to, nor should they at this stage of their lives, and with all the other things they've got going on, such as families and living in paradise, should they uproot everything and start at this late stage of their ages. So I like the kids, but, no, it's not going to happen for those reasons. It's not any shortcoming on their part. As far as who could cast that movie, Jiminy Christmas, I have no clue where you'd find anybody that looks like Carrie. I've heard about the movie happening, is basically all I don't know who's producing it, whether there's a legitimate, big time studio behind it. I honestly, Brian, scoff at me if you will. If you held a gun to me and said, pick Zac Efron out of a police lineup, does he look like any of the Von Erichs?
Not particularly, but, he is in shape. He's younger looking, even though he's not as young as he used to be. So he could fit one of those roles. I'll say, if he wants to prove he's a really great actor, play Mike.
Oh, come on now.
No, really, make that role something special. I think Mike Von Erich gets the shaft too often. People are just, he didn't want to be a wrestler. He wasn't very good, or this and that. There's a complex guy in there before everything goes wrong, and then after the septic or the toxic shock syndrome, then he's a completely different guy. His brain is fried. But there's a story there that's fascinating.
I never met him before the first incident he had. I don't think. Did I? Wasn't that, or was that afterwards?
No, yeah, you were there because nothing happened until after the Israel tour when he hurt his shoulder.
Shit, that's right. Okay, well then in that case, Brian, I met Mike Von Erich. There wasn't a complex guy in there. He was not complex. He was nice.
Well, there is what a great actor can do. They can make Mike Von Erich into a complex, interesting character.
Who's going to play Waldo?
I don't know if Waldo's going to make the movie. I have a feeling that side of the family is going to be, although Lance is a big part of the story, the fake cousin they make up, and then it backfires on them. You have to think that would be probably part of the movie. Who's going to play Fritz? Who in Hollywood would play Fritz Von Erich?
You know what? We say this every time that there's a wrestling movie or a wrestling TV show, and with Young Rock, everybody that they get, with the exception of the Bam Bam Bigelow guy, didn't look too bad, and Luke Hawx got Austin's promo, but not obviously facially. But most of these people look like ridiculous, what do they say, great value imitations, or what you order on Wish or whatever. And I think we've hit on something. The reason why that main event wrestling stars is in large part because nobody else looks like them. And they got that going for them. So good luck. I don't know. You're going to find anybody to look like Fritz or Kerry or even Kevin. David may be a stretch. How many 6'5" bucktooth cowboys you got out there?
What's Eric Stoltz doing?
But anyway, it's up in the air. But maybe we'll see it at a movie palace near us.
Jim, another topic that various people sent in a clip about, and I saw this and retweeted on Twitter because I got a big kick out of it. Did you see MJF was recently talked about on the Wendy Williams show hosted by Sherry Shepherd?
This is another thing I saw on Twitter. I did not watch the clip because I was rushing and didn't have time. And I thought maybe it was clickbait or whatever. And I heard Wendy Williams isn't hosting anymore. That's a shame. But who is Sherry Shepherd and what did she have to say about MJF?
She used to be on The View and then she left The View. I'll play you.
I forgot to watch The View for the remainder of my life, ever.
Well, she got away from Barbara Walters, and now she's the guest host of the Wendy Williams show, but Wendy Williams herself was nice enough to tweet this out. I have some audio we'll play. We'll break it up a few times to get your thoughts. But here's the introduction. A very interesting thing that they say about MJF at the start. Let's play this.
I'm so excited to be here. I got to tell you, there is a story that I forgot to tell you all the other day. When I was flying from Los Angeles to New York, I had an encounter with a former child star who appeared on the Rosie O'Donnell show back in 2001. Okay, so at the time, he was 5 years old, and some of you may remember him because his name is Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And Rosie had him on as a guest. He came on at 5, and he came to sing. This little cutie patootie. He was so adorable, and Rosie wanted to hug. You could tell he didn't even want to give Rosie a hug. He just was like... Now, young Max did not grow up to become a professional singer. He's wonderful. He is now 26 years old, and he goes by the initials MJF, and he's a professional wrestler, okay? Yes. He is...
All right, let me stop it there for a second. Former child star.
I love former child star. MJF, the Rosie O'Donnell show, I'm not trying to belittle MJF's past careers, but the Rosie O'Donnell show would have probably been the pinnacle of that child stardom, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, unless he somehow got on a background scene on Sesame Street, I think Rosie O'Donnell is probably as good as it would have gotten.
Yeah, he's been doing more community theater since he joined AEW than he has the rest of his life.
That's true. Interesting reactions, though, from the audience there. Again, a mostly female audience, if not... No, there's a man there. Mostly female audience. A mostly female audience reacting with oohs and ahs to MJF and his name. What do you think of that?
Well, they oohed, I'm sure, the video at first when he was a cute little peckerhead on Rosie, but then they oohed, and it was like there was some recognition of who he was when she revealed he's a pro wrestler named MJF, and everybody, oh! oh, kind of like, oh, some of them knew. So maybe they're closet wrestling fans watching over their spouse's shoulder.
You know, maybe a growing conversation, whatever he ends up doing, the idea that he is one of the more recognizable pro wrestlers in the world. Even people who don't necessarily watch wrestling, if you flip by once and you saw him acting like a dick, you're never going to forget his face.
Yeah, and he gets a lot of outside publicity for the various things he does where he continues to be himself and act like a dick out in public, and more than most people. Because now they're so surprised when they're not disappointed when they meet a wrestler and he turns out to be a big phony.
Well, let's see how he acted here. Let's go back to Sherry Shepherd's story.
He's a professional wrestler. MJF, and I guess the J in MJF stands for jerk, okay? And I'm gonna tell y'all why, because that's what he was acting like when I met him at the airport when we were waiting in the lounge. Not nice at all. And see, my son Jeffrey, he is a big wrestling fan. He knows all of the wrestlers, so he spotted MJF while we were waiting for the plane, Norman. And, you know, Jeffrey was really nervous about going up to him and asking for an autograph, because you don't know. And so I said, I'll do it for my baby, because I'm Mother Bear. So I said I would go up and ask him for an autograph. And I know how to be with celebrities. I know they don't want you to do a lot of talking, Norman. So I was very nice, and I tapped him gently on the leg. And I said, excuse me, are you the famous wrestler MJF? He snapped back. He said, no. And so I said, okay. I said, but, well, do people tell you that you look like the famous wrestler MJF? Then he snapped back. He went, yes. And he put his headphones on and he turns away from me. Okay? And I wanted to say to him, I don't like your tone. That's what I wanted to tell him. And I was just like, he got one more time to snap at me before I laid the smack down on him. I was not playing. You don't really?
Let me stop it there for a second. Any thoughts on all this?
Well, obviously, I guess MJF didn't know that the fan bugging him at the airport had a national network television program where he was going to be hearing about it afterward. Would you know Sherry Shepherd if she walked up to you?
I know the name. I may recognize her, but she looks kind of different than I remembered her looking, so I probably would.
Probably here's MJF doing what he always does. He's staying in gimmick, and he's probably pissed off because is anybody ever happy to be in an airport? And here comes somebody, are you the famous wrestler? No, leave me alone. And he hears the story on fucking network television. That's great. But it adds to the gimmick.
And again, it exposes him to an audience that isn't watching AEW Dynamite.
Yeah. And everybody knows there's a bunch of them.
Let's go back to this audio.
Jeffrey was standing right there and he was smiling and everything. And then Jeffrey tells me, he goes, no, Mom, MJF is a bad guy and he's supposed to be a jerk. And I'm like, no. But here's the thing, y'all. I told my son, I said, but no, see, he don't know what a real bad guy is unless he pisses off a black mama trying to get a photo for her son. I'm trying to get a photo for my baby. Like, I wasn't bothering him, Norman. I just wanted a little picture. I was so mad at him. And Marco, this is when I remembered, because I thought that you said you had thought about becoming a pro wrestler at one time. So I want to know, would you have drop kicked him, MJF, if you was there with me?
Yeah, I would have DDT'd him for sure. For sure. Bring him.
Okay, I don't know who this guy is. He's either the security guard or he works on the show or he warms up the crowd. I don't know who this is, just some guy standing at the side of the stage.
Well, now, was this the end of the interaction? Did she go all black mama wanting to get a picture with her son on him, or did he get the picture, or what was the resolution of this thing?
We'll go to the resolution. I hate to say that, it made me think of it. One of the greatest awful lines in wrestling history. Remember when Brandy Rhodes confronted Dan Lambert and she said, "You may have a black belt, but I'm a black bitch."
Yeah. Well, it got a problem. But now here's the thing. You know the questions that the boys get asked and have for years and years. I've been at everybody, because they'll see you and people might be pointing at you and they're not sure, or they think you're somebody else or whatever. But I've been asked, at wrestling shows when I was standing back behind the fence in the arena or out on the high school football field or whatever, watching the matches, standing there with the wrestlers. Somebody would come up and, are you anybody? Or this is a better, did you used to be somebody? Or didn't you used to be Jim Cornette? Yeah, but I quit that a long time ago. That type of, just the questions. Sometimes you want to have a little fun.
Well, once again, MJF's in the airport in Los Angeles when this is happening. Let's go back to this audio.
Here, right there with a DDT MJF. So I literally, Norman, I said, well, maybe I am wrong. I wanted to make sure that the man that was being a jerk to me was really MJF. So I was acting like TMZ, y'all, and I snuck a picture of him when we were on the plane because he was right in front of us. And I texted my producing partner, John Murray, and I said, because he's into wrestling too. And I said, is this the wrestler MJF? Because Jeffrey said it was. And he replied, he said, yes, it was him. So you know what? I was like, I know somebody big and bad to deal with MJF. I hit up my friend, he's Hall of Famer and former world's strongest man, Mark Henry. So Mark Henry. What? Wow. Because it turns out Mark Henry works with MJF now at All Elite Wrestling. And so Mark Henry does not look like anybody MJF would say no to.
Exactly.
Like it did me. So Mark, when I told Mark, because I had to play it up, I was like, Mark, and then he said no to me. And then and Jeffrey was on the floor crying. So Mark told me that he was gonna handle it. So Mark, I thank you for talking to MJF.
How about that? How about that for free publicity?
And can you imagine when Mark went up to MJF and said, hey, were you rude to somebody's kid at the airport? Well, how'd you know?
No, it's even better than that. Can you imagine Mark, 2 days after everyone's talking about MJF no-showing a meet and greet, and then he's not at the show except for his match, and then he vanishes, and then he comes and he does that promo on Dynamite and walks out through the crowd? The next day, you're minding your own business, and Sherry Shepherd calls you up. This MJF just yelled at me and my son in the airport.
He's everywhere. He's the modern-day El Kabong. MJF.
They gave this 5 minutes. They gave this 5 minutes on TV.
Hey, and at least
that's national TV.
They mentioned the right promotion, because usually whatever wrestling is, he's a big WWE guy. But at least they got the company right. See, Tony ought to make Sherry Shepherd his chief brandy officer.
Well, now let's really think about this.
I'm surprised that woman, I'm surprised with her son being treated like that she didn't seek any kind of legal recourse.
Well, I was going to actually say, I would think if I was Tony Khan and MJF is just on this campaign of hate and just attacking innocent people and children at airports, I think I may talk to another attorney other than Mega and say, what can I do to really punish this little bastard?
That's right, and we all know that if you want somebody punished, if you want somebody miserable, if you want somebody at their wits' end, just introduce them to this man.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Those are the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, just a few minutes of conversation with Stephen P. New can make somebody miserable. That's right, positively miserable. He will roast them and walk them across Texas and make them sell like they're going to the electric chair. Because Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084, not only takes up cases of children that have been slandered and told off at airports and mothers that are wringing their hands over what to do about it. But if you've been wrongfully terminated from your job or harassed in any way, you know what? Stephen may ought to move to Stamford. I hear they got a lot of these harassment and wrongful termination cases going on up in Connecticut. But also, if you've been poisoned by a big company, if your rights or your health has been infringed on, anybody in your family or social circle that you know with any of these issues, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. The man, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, can help as well. He is as we've mentioned many times, a philandering philanthropist over there in West Virginia, raising money for children's athletic uniforms, feeding the homeless, righting wrongs, carrying the banner for justice everywhere, in the legal courtroom and outside. That's right, Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Sherry
right.
Shepherd, write that number down. I believe you've got a case.
Tony Khan, write that number down. You may have a case.
That's right. He's slandering everybody. Old MJF. Well, I'm surprised he hasn't even said unkind things about you and me, Brian. He's just lost his mind. He's so full of anger. But you'll be full of money when Stephen P. New gets you paid, and the other guy will be full of anger.
All right.
Everybody wants to be full of it.
Sometimes I think the spot's done, and then it just happens again. It's like, oh, we were back in it. I didn't even realize.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
back there again.
Well, Jim, this next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com.
We got music on this program?
We have a couple songs coming up momentarily.
I'm ready to do a tap dance. Go ahead.
This song was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from John O.
Wait, so you just dropped the last question.
No, I'm going to the last question right here.
You said this song.
Did I say song? You
said this song.
You have messed me up with your hijinks here this week. This next question was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com.
Oh, God.
Don't hurt yourself.
Oh.
From John O. in Long Island, New York. I know from most of history, the managers and cornermen have been used to hype up their wrestlers and cut a promo for them when needed. But in kayfabe, why are managers allowed at ringside? With the amount of cheating that they've done, shouldn't there have been some rule either in the NWA or other territories to prevent managers from being at ringside to avoid interfering? Without that rule, the only way I could see promoters allowing... Again, he's in kayfabe, I gotta remind myself. Without that rule, the only way I could see promoters allowing ringside managers is if they expect the referees to have the memories of goldfish. Plus, it might be harder for fans to buy if interference and DQs even happen occasionally, since you wouldn't see an NFL coach rush the field with a tennis racket or pull someone's leg to help. Any insight into this part of the wrestling business and psychology here would be appreciated.
Well, yes, we've talked before that managers and seconds go back in boxing and wrestling and any combat sport. The MMA fighters now have a whole procession and team that goes out with them. But at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, that was the thing, is every fighter is allowed to have someone in their corner, right? This goes back to the days of John L. Sullivan and William Muldoon and etc. And it just so happened that the way that wrestling worked out, the manager or the second or the part, whoever the corner man was probably predisposed to interfere at a certain crucial time. And that's the reason why that most of the babyface wrestlers, most of the wrestlers that were honorable and straight up and scientific, they didn't have corner men, but the heels did, because they didn't mind taking a shortcut, but they would obviously, like everything else, it started completely believably, where there would just be a slight referee distraction or a guy knocking a guy's foot off the rope at the right time, or, something simple that could actually happen. And when that got heat, then it was magnified and played upon, and then there became more managers and more interference. And then finally, it was pretty much accepted by the fans that a manager, anytime he got the chance, was going to interfere on behalf of his guys, but a good referee wouldn't let him. until finally something happened where the poor referee, through no fault of his own, was distracted. And the manager did the one thing at the one time, at the split second, that it meant something. And that's great when you've got people that know how to portray all of that. But then everybody got sloppy. So, and then it got prostituted where they were interfering and they were burying the referee, and guys who couldn't, get the point of interfering in and out quickly and not putting the heat on the referee, and et cetera, et cetera. And then it became a thing to where, like today's modern wrestling, and over the last 20 years, everybody running wrestling grew up watching everything and not knowing what was the good part and the bad part and where to draw a line, and just, that's what managers are supposed to do. They interfere. Except now in the WWE, there are no managers except for Heyman, and he doesn't interfere. But everywhere else, they go crazy. And yes, it had gotten, out of hand and too much. And as far as disqualifications, yes, there were probably in the territory days more disqualifications in programs, in main event programs, than there were actual clean finishes. Because why? Unless it was going to be the heel fucks the babyface and beats him illegally to continue the program, every once in a while the babyface would slip over and get a victory, and then the heel would turn around and get heat on him again afterwards, do something fucking horrible. But most of the time, you didn't want your babyface to win the program until the end of it, because then people would quit coming once the babyface won. They wouldn't want to see any more of it. That's why the babyface was a main event babyface, because he got win after win after win after win when he came in the territory, and win after win after win to climb up the card. And then you start beating him with your top heel, and he has to overcome all these obstacles to win in the end. So there were more DQs than there were anything else, because that fit the fucking picture. And if you're doing a 13-week program where guys are going to wrestle 13 fucking weeks in a row, you're going to have to DQ some of those things and then shoot an angle afterwards for the next week or whatever. And before wrestling fans got fucking weird and everybody lost their minds that's running the business, nobody yelled and screamed about disqualifications, except they were upset if their guy didn't win the fucking belt or the match. If the babyface won by disqualification, they were just as happy with that because at least he won, but they still wanted to see him win the title or pin the 3 count or get even or whatever. So that's what that is. And it just now, it's as preposterous as everything else in wrestling, because people lost sight of how it started and what the purpose was, and ended up just making it another thing that everybody does.
All right, Jim. Well, before we wrap up with a few songs, we have some breaking news.
Wait a minute. Hold on. What now?
As being reported by Mike Johnson, PW Insider, and PWInsiderElite.com, Vince McMahon and Oliver Luck settle XFL lawsuit.
Oh!
A settlement has been reached in the lawsuit brought against Vince McMahon by former XFL Commissioner Oliver Luck just weeks before the planned commencement of the trial on July 11th in Connecticut. Despite settlement talks last week ending after just 9 minutes, a filing on June 17th requested the United States District Court of Connecticut seal all documents related to the case. So they're waiting for the court to officially okay everything, but a settlement has been agreed upon. What do you think about the timing of this?
Well, last week the talks ended in 9 minutes. That was before the announcement of Vince's other legal issues.
It was the same day, wasn't it?
Baby,
I think it was the same day.
You know, he picked the wrong day to quit sniffing glue last week. I'm assuming that he said, okay, first things first and most important things most important, and let's get out of this. And they sealed it, which means that we won't know the terms of the settlement, who admitted they were right and who they were wrong, and what was paid to who, and etc. So that won't necessarily prejudice public opinion or anybody else on Vince's current predicament, but if they broke down after 9 minutes last week and all of a sudden they've settled, I think that's an indication that Vince would like to clear up some of the flea market bullshit he's involved in, tackle the main stuff.
And actually, on that point, let's just go through the numbers real quick, again from Mike Johnson's article here. Luck had sued McMahon over his departure, which took place just as the league filed for bankruptcy in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic and before it was purchased by a group of investors led by The Rock and Danny Garcia, who aimed to relaunch the league in 2023. Luck's contract called for a $5 million annual salary and a yearly $2 million bonus through June 30th, 2023. Luck alleges he is owed $23.8 million remaining on his contract, as well as other damages and his attorney fees. McMahon filed a countersuit against Oliver Luck, former XFL commissioner, alleging Luck all but abandoned his duties as the pandemic took hold, and that even before this point, Luck ignored McMahon's direction when it came to the signing of former NFL wide receiver Antonio Callaway by XFL's Tampa Bay Vipers. Jim, he was suing for $23.8 million. Talks ended in 9 minutes, and now there's a settlement.
Well, and he didn't get that. I'm pretty sure we can surmise that he didn't get everything he asked for. But part of the thing was Vince, fired him so he wouldn't have to pay him, and they were closing the whole thing down. The COVID came. He got buyer's remorse, second XFL close down. But thing that Luck fucked up on was Vince had said, I don't want to hire any football players with bad criminal records or bad PR or whatever. We got to keep the players clean. And that led to a great deposition exchange last week when the opposing attorney asked Vince McMahon, said, well, have you ever been accused of a felony or criminal charge? Well, whatever. Yes. Well, yes. Then you technically wouldn't be able to play for an XFL team yourself. And he said, no, but I'm the owner, so it doesn't count. But anyway, Luck signed a guy, the guy you mentioned, and Vince found out about it. He'd had charges or he'd done something, and Vince said, fire this guy. I don't want him. So instead of firing him when Vince told him to fire him, Oliver Luck let the guy go out and practice, and they were going to tell him when he came back, and he went out and got hurt in practice. And they had to pay him what his contract, several $1 million or whatever the fuck it was, enough to make Vince pissed. I can tell you flat out that if Vince says do something and you don't do it, and by the time that you can do it, it's cost him a bunch of money because you didn't do it, he ain't happy. And so that's what, so Vince had something on him as well. That's why they were fighting about it.
Although,
so
again,
I would assume they met somewhere in the middle.
Again, he was filing for bankruptcy, and then he realized he owed all this money to Oliver Luck. It just so happened that this all happened at the same time.
Yes. So it was brought to Vince's attention. Hey, guess what this guy did? I mean, yeah, but again,
send me someone from legal. I
need an egg.
A paralegal.
That should be illegal. But maybe he paid him half. What's $20 million to Vince, right? With all he's got going on right now. At least we don't have to worry about poor Oliver. Oliver will be fine.
But with that, Jim, the drive-thru is closed. I don't have the energy for the sacks this week.
That's what Suzanne said last week. You didn't have the energy for the sacks.
Oh, will you stop it? I always have the energy for that sacks. I shouldn't say that.
You might better just do the plugs. I don't know you're going to get out of this one gracefully.
Well, Jim, of course, you get to hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this weekend, and of course the drive-thru next week. If there happens to be some major breaking news, of course, check in with the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. Subscribe today. Travis Heckel artwork, full shows, clips of shows, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel, and both podcasts available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Of course, you can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Of course, patreon.com/Cornette. $5 a month gets you access to the archive going back to the beginning in 2013. Patreon.com/Cornette. Don't forget about Cornette's collectibles at JimCornette.com. What's the status?
The status?
What's the frequency, Kenneth?
What's the frequency, Kenneth? It's fine merchandise at affordable prices and fun for the whole family at JimCornette.com. No waiting, make the feather bottoms miserable.
At JimCornette.com. Of course, the drive-thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until this weekend on The Experience, and next week right back here on the drive-thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!